Evening. I'm going to call to order the January 22nd, 2024 school committee meeting. This meeting is being held in person and or remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 and all other applicable laws, temporarily amending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify the chair at the start of the meeting in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, so that the chair may inform all other participants of said recording. We have Harbor Media recording this evening, as well as a recording on Zoom for purposes of minutes. Is there anybody else in the audience or online recording? If you could throw your hand up. No, okay. And before I proceed, I'm going to recognize Tina Sherwood so that she can call to order ACES. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to item number 2, approval of minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes to possibly approve tonight.
Are you ready for a motion?
Yes, please.
All right, I will move to approve the minutes of the school committee meeting held on January 4th, 2024. I will second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Oh, actually, I have to take a roll call because we've got Allie online. So Matt?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Carrie? Jen?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Allie?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Those are approved. 2.2.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes of the school committee meeting held on January 8th, 2024. I will second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, Matt?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Allie?
She's on.
Yeah, she's on mute. No, that's okay. Sorry, and I'm an aye as well. And then the last set of minutes.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes of the school committee meeting held on January 18th, 2024.
Do we have a second?
I will second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, Matt?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Allie?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Okay, those are approved. Item number 3 is questions and comments. We've set aside 15 minutes to take questions and comments for items that are not on tonight's agenda. Our practice is to take the questions and comments during the new business items for anything that comes up for those. But if there's not anything on tonight's agenda that somebody would like to speak to, if you could raise your hand, either online or in the audience, and I'll read my statement. Nope. Okay. So we will move over to item number 4, superintendent's report. Dr. Adams?
So a couple of things tonight, briefly. The elementary report cards, I've reported in the past that this year we'll be using the Aspen Family Portal to have those delivered to families electronically. We'll be sending reminder emails this week. For families who haven't quite logged into the family portal, we'll be sending reminders also about how to log in with their username and password. We're hoping that this provides a means for families to have and support communication using Aspen as our student information system. We continue registration for our Kids in Action preschool pre-K program and the integrated preschool pre-K program. The information for registration is online and will close at the end of this week, so any families that are still interested. We've enjoyed getting to know our young families in the community and are looking forward to a lottery for the programs on February 5th here at Town Hall at 9 o'clock. Families do not have to be present at the lottery, and we'll soon begin afterwards notifying families if they have a seat or have been placed on the waiting list. We also started last week kindergarten registration. We also enjoyed welcoming those families, new families, to the Hingham Public Schools. We had an open house last week at the middle school. We're grateful to Katie and all of the elementary principals and assistant principals who helped that evening. The packet is online, and families are asked to return that registration packet to their prospective schools between February 5th and February 16th. Just a plug for, and you probably have seen the signs in the community, the Hingham High School Chorus Department is having a mattress fundraiser I read some of the description. You can not only just get a mattress, but you can also get some pillowcases and sheets and lots of weighted blankets. It looks like a great opportunity to support the music program at the high school as well. I shared some information on student attendance. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education at the state level has had a renewed focus on student attendance. And as a leadership team, we've been looking at student attendance for the first half of the year. In the state of Massachusetts, almost 1 in 4 students have last year missed 18 school days or more. I gave you some information on attendance rates for school year 19 and then school year 22-23 post-pandemic and pre-pandemic, indicating still a need to return back to pre-pandemic levels for attendance rate. The state has identified priority schools for attendance in the state, and Hingham Middle School has been identified as one. They're using a formula to indicate how many schools are returning back to those pre-pandemic levels for school attendance rates. They're measuring chronic absenteeism. Those are students that are 10% or more, absent 10% or more of the school year, which would be 18 days of a school year. As a leadership team, we've been looking at those chronic absentee rates for this year, sending out letters and brainstorming ways to get the message out to families. We know that there's still quite a bit of illness in the community, and that's one reason that students are out. But as well, trying to reinforce the importance of students being in school for their academic performance, as well as routines that are supported in the classroom that can help build community. And for the long term, I think one of the things we don't realize as parents is those early routines in the elementary grades really support students as they grow up in the grades in middle and high school, and support some positive attitudes about schooling. And attendance is one of those components. So we'll continue working on that over the next half of the school year to really support families and individual students who might be struggling. So.
Any questions?
Yeah. I do have a question, and I may just be misreading the calculation, but I understood the middle school, but I was trying to figure out the high school as well, because the absenteeism rate is higher than it was pre-pandemic, right? So it was 6.7 and now it's 9.8, but it didn't drop more than 50% from.
So the state is probably comparing the high school to other high schools across the state.
Okay.
And looking at chronic absenteeism.
Okay, so it was grade span
Yes.
across the district, across the state rather
Yes.
than just in the
So
district.
it's doing
Okay,
some
got it.
comparisons across the state as
Okay,
well.
that makes sense.
So the middle school, it didn't have it, it hasn't returned, and I'm not sure what the state rate is, but
Okay.
there is that is online, but
Okay.
that's probably why.
All right, that makes sense. Thank you.
And I recognize that some of this, because of the pandemic, there was school avoidance. Do parents come to you when things like that are happening? And do you have things that you're working with the students on when that happens?
I think those are conversations we're having with the school, at the school level. Those would be principals, guidance counselors, school adjustment counselors. I think we've discussed, and we'll discuss as part of the budget, again, there are increased social emotional learning needs and behavioral health needs of our students, and school avoidance is one.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you ask practitioners now, they would say there's more of that than pre-pandemic, for sure.
Yeah.
And school avoidance, mental health concerns are all part of what we're seeing an increase of.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, so item 5, communications. Communications received by the superintendent? No. Student communications, Alex.
This past week, HHS launched a new website designed to help students find volunteer opportunities as part of what we might be adding to the student handbook tonight as a community service requirement for graduation of 40 hours. HHS counselors delivered a presentation about exploring life after high school that offered students excellent tips about post-secondary plans. The school council met this past Wednesday about the school improvement plan. Mid-year exams continued today with science and English after Mid-year exams began with science and English this past Friday and continued with math and history today. And they'll be ending tomorrow with makeups and a few select courses. School of the World will be sharing information this upcoming Monday at 6:30 p.m. about upcoming service trips. And those include Guatemala, Panama, and Honduras, which would give students the opportunity to explore new cultures, make new friends, and fulfill service hours. And classes will be resuming on Wednesday with the first, second semester courses, so students will be changing up their schedules. And seniors are starting to hear back about their early action applications, which we'll be keeping an eye out over the next month. And I'm sure there's a lot of people, given Hingham's 93% of students continuing education after high school.
Great, thank you. We've got Slater Fairfield here tonight. Welcome back. Do you want to add anything? I don't want to put you on the spot, but okay. All right, thank you. All right, 5.3, other communications. Anything from the committee? I did have a couple letters from parents concerning the volunteer requirement that Principal Swanson's going to be talking about. Anytime I hear from the parents, I think there is concern for the requirement. I think the feedback was that it's just added pressure for the kids and it's just adding one more thing. So I wanted to let the committee know that I've received a few of those as well as conversations. All right, unfinished business, we don't have anything. And then new business, this is very exciting, to honor students selected to represent the state as one of the U.S. Presidential Scholar nominees from Massachusetts. And I will let Dr. Adams do the honor.
Sure. We have Nora here. If you want to come on up, Nora, we'll put you on the spot. We're excited to acknowledge Nora Andrews, and we have a little certificate for her from the state, from Hingham High School, and she's been selected by the commissioner, Jeff Riley, to represent the state as one of the U.S. Presidential Scholars nominees for the state of Massachusetts. The review team said, at DESE said, they were impressed with Nora's submission and reported that they are proud to have her represent the state of Massachusetts as one of the nominees for this prestigious award. This award, the U.S. Presidential Scholars Program, was established in 1964 by an executive order of the President to recognize and honor some of our nation's most distinguished graduating high school seniors. Each year, approximately 160 students from across the state are named by the U.S. Department of Education as presidential scholars, one of the nation's highest honors for high school students. Their accomplishments are based in many areas, both academics, leadership, and involvement in their school community, and represent excellence in education and the promise of greatness among our Americans' youth. They're honored for their accomplishments during the National Recognition Program each June. And we're excited that Nora will be representing the state of Massachusetts, and wish her luck in the next stage of the competition and her application as part of the next stage. We're so proud of you as a community. Mr. Swanson, do you want to add anything? Put you on the spot?
Well, this is the first time that...
Come on up, though.
Okay.
Can't hear you.
Well, on behalf of the high school, I would just say we certainly share in the pride that Dr. Adams has expressed, and I would add that it's the first time that Hingham High School has had a nominee who will advance to the next round. We've been nominating students for a number of years, and we could not have asked for a finer representative of our school and of our community. So, Nora, congratulations. Lots to go give Joey.
I think we need to get Joe up here for a picture, too. Joe, come on up for a picture.
Don't trip on the wires. The technology.
Okay, congratulations.
Super exciting. So we've done our job now, right? We can just go home? 'Cause that's what we've
That's
got.
what we're all here for.
All right. So 7.2, not as exciting, but something near and dear to my heart, to provide a budget. Very excited. To provide a budget overview for fiscal '25 for elementary, middle, high school, and athletics. So I will let Aisha kick it off.
The first couple of slides are information we've presented. This will be the third time we've presented, but just briefly for members of the community who may not have heard it. Last meeting, the first meeting in January, we provided sort of a general overview of the budget. Last meeting, we started to walk through departments, including transportation, facilities, technology, as well as student teaching and learning and support services. And so tonight, we're going to go through each of the schools, as well as talk about athletics, which will round up most of all of the departments of the budget presentation. Our priorities this year, as we've described, are to continue to focus on supporting student services. We've talked about increased needs of students throughout the budget process, both behavioral health, social, emotional, and academic needs. We have a commitment to continue to support MTSS, as well as the professional development needed to support our staff in meeting the needs of all the students, and continue to support facilities and technology. We want to center the budget on the continued work of the strategic plan. Some drivers that we've named include continuing to meet our contractual obligations. The budget that we're presenting as for FY25 is based upon the current offers that we have to the units that we're still negotiating with. Increased substitute costs are one of those areas that is reflected in the budget. Increased fuel cost, and we've been talking about increasing fees, including tonight, discussion around increasing athletic fees. Last meeting, we talked about increased student needs, including out-of-district tuitions, including also need for more related service providers, BCDA support, speech and language, including support for psychologists to complete testing on students. We've been sharing some information that indicates this increase in student needs is not just unique to Hingham, but also being seen throughout the nation as students are returning post-pandemic and struggling in response both around speech and language, increased needs, and social, emotional, and behavioral health. We presented a preliminary town forecast. Did you want to add anything here?
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very preliminary. It shows that we're still in a deficit of about $1 million, but it's still very early. We'll get another couple forecasts later in the year, and then we'll present that to you when we have that information. The MOU we've spoken about as well. And last week we went into detail, it was last week, right? Last week we went into detail in terms of the carve-out on the MOU for out-of-district tuitions and specialized services, and that threshold that we have to jump to be able to get any reimbursements from the town, and we reflected what that amount was and how we arrived at that amount as well. And this is just more information on the MOU as well, too. Okay?
So we'll invite the elementary principals to come up to talk a little bit, someone's coming up, about their budget priorities and consideration. And then each is also going to share just a little information about the highlights of the school, of their school, and their budget for this year.
All right, I'm on deck. All right, so as we looked at prioritizing and considerations for looking at the budget for next year, we were looking at our MTSS structures and resources to make sure that we're maximizing the impact to make sure that all students are successful, evaluating our curriculum material supplies and technology applications, sort of seeing what are we using, what aren't we using, what could we sort of get rid of in the use of apps that we're no longer using or programs, and maintain professional learning communities, so our PLCs that we have built into our days this year, and wanted to make sure that we wanted to keep them going forward. They've been extremely helpful in driving our sort of learning process with our staff forward. The elementary impact on the budget, we want to make sure that the budget will allow us to continue the implementation of MTSS. So looking at those daily prescriptive tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 interventions that we've talked so much about, coordinating amongst the specialists, the reading, the writing, literacy, and the math interventionists and classroom teachers to make sure that we're supporting all students as effectively as possible, and sort of putting all hands on deck to make sure that we can reach all of our students. We have our content area coaching with writing, reading, literacy, and math, and how do we accelerate the student learning for those who need some enrichment to go a little bit further. We're looking at conscious decisions to maintain social emotional learning and support. So our guidance counselors, our school adjustment counselors, making sure they're reaching our students' needs as well. We're supporting the district strategic plan and our school improvement plans, as you have heard from all of us who have given an update on our school improvement plans, are providing the work that goes into helping out the district strategic plan, as well as professional development and coaching of teachers. And we're working at maintaining current class sizes in order to make sure that we keep our teacher to student ratio where it's at right now. These are our ratios, as you can see right now. Some schools have 4 classrooms, some schools have 3, really dependent upon where we are in the district and how many kids are in each class. And then I'm going to give this to East.
Good evening. Happy to be here representing East Elementary. As I updated in October, we are in year 2 of a school improvement plan. The general summary of our goals here depicts a focus on student data and performance analysis, to community outreach, developing inclusive practices in our classrooms and equity throughout our school, and ensuring that we are keeping up with the social emotional needs of our students. These figures represent what the East Elementary budget looks like in a level service situation. Our student population splits are displayed for you here. A piece that when you're thinking through the lens of budget and what is important to East Elementary, I focus on the special education needs at East Elementary. Some of these figures here, you'll see the total student population is 443. That is our K-5 student population. What is important and is not necessarily displayed here in these raw averages is that the East Elementary houses 3 district-wide programs, 2 of which service the K-5 population. We have the language-based program called the Lab, the Language and Academic Home Base, and also the Comprehensive Learning Center, the CLC. That supports the needs and substantially separate needs of students in the academic realm from grades 3 through 5. We're also proud to host the district's pre-K and preschool program. Obviously, we'll be moving forward with an expansion to that program out to Foster, but right now that is another important factor when thinking about the special education needs of East Elementary. So thinking through the budget lens, that impacts us with regard to paraprofessionals and special educators. It's something that we want to make sure that we're maintaining at East. This is the staffing ratios for East Elementary, and here you do see the 86 pre-K students represented here as well. You're up, Matt.
Anybody have any questions so far? Okay.
I was going to call him back. Good evening, everybody. It feels like it was just a little over a month ago when I presented about the update to our school improvement plan. We have the goals listed here, very much aligned with the district plans. Thinking about culture of collaboration and community, we have been working hard on communicating about the building project, as you're well aware. Going to goal number 2, culturally responsive teaching and learning. This ties very much into the budget desire to maintain our MTSS system and the work that we're doing with students. I'll probably stop here for a moment because it is, in my opinion, one of the most important initiatives that any district can undertake is to develop a multi-tiered system of support. I know it's a budget priority, so I'm going to stop and just say over the last week, one of the things that's been new this year for all our schools is the introduction to professional learning communities and really providing people with the professional ability to sit down and have the conversations and dialogues with our reading coach, with our math coach, with our writing coach. And I think the feedback that I'm getting from the Foster staff is in particular around all of the areas that it's glowing, but I think the work that we're doing and the impact we have on children with the coaching model and with the PLCs is particularly critical when we look at the implementation of a new reading program. Staff are saying they feel very supportive. They feel that they are better able to implement the reading program. They are constantly coming back around and getting that support necessary for a nice, smooth transition. In addition, the work that our writing coach has done in support of the new reading program, finding the tie-ins to our Empowering Writers curriculum, helping develop the lessons that need to be implemented and finding a logical place for these lessons to fit in with the current reading curriculum. All of that work is happening every time they meet with the coaches, and I think it's important to talk about the other high emphasis was from the staff feedback in my meetings with them over the last week was around data and having the professional time to be able to look at student data, make meaningful groups, and really implement what students need during that block of time where we call it intervention. I like to refer to it as giving children what they need. So that said, looking at healthy, equitable, and inclusive communities, looking at our PBIS system, that is a major focus right now at Foster. I need to echo where we started this presentation tonight in that the social emotional needs of our students are much higher, I think, than before the pandemic. We are dealing with quite a bit at a school level, but I think getting a solid Tier 1 PBIS system in place will really help us reduce the volume of students referred to the office and provide the supports that students need. And then looking at culturally responsive teaching and learning. I talked a little bit about this last month, looking at our data-informed instruction, the IST process, and making sure that our 504 and IEP processes are there and supporting our student learners so that they're getting what they need. All of these, I think, tie in with the 3 priorities that were listed at the start. Here is a snapshot of the current Foster budget. And our student groups and population. And right now, this is the first time I think we're saying this at Foster, is we have a pre-K classroom. I want to highlight the work that's been done through KIA on our Spanish immersion program. I think next year, with the opening of the new school, to be officially named later, but we know where we're headed. I think if we talk about the excitement that we have next year about receiving more preschoolers into foster and making a real quality program to help support the district needs across the board, especially in the realm of special education. Our class sizes are very reasonably ratioed right now. And I think one thing that I lose a little sleep on at night is I'm wondering if we're going to see an uptick in enrollment next year as the new building opens its doors. And, we'll not really lose sleep because I love having kids in the school. So it's a good thing on that end. But I do think we have a couple of grades that might be on the cusp of needing a little more if we get too many people coming in. With that said, I get to pass this off to our friend Greg here.
I'm back. So we're going to talk a little bit about Plymouth River. So again, we've spoken about our school improvement goals with academics, implementing the new schedule. We are still looking at that schedule and seeing how we can tweak that schedule more to meet the needs, best meet the needs of the students and the staff, so they're getting the ability to. The way I'm looking at it right now is that some of our students are they have so much academics going on, and how can we break that up with specialists or lunch like that. So we're still looking at how can we feasibly still keep working that schedule so it's best for students, and they're not sitting for too long. And that sort of goes into it with a social emotional realm of making sure that also we're looking at our students and improving that social emotional support, having the guidance counselor go in once a cycle, giving the toolbox tools and other tools to help the students move forward. Again, these are all attached to the larger district goals. We have been able to build our connections and grow throughout our school community using our SMORE, using Instagram, pushing those out. I'm seeing more and more of my SMORE being looked at more than 1 minute. There's actually some more, it's not a click on, open it and read. Now we're getting some higher reading times in there. And we're continuing on with our Universal Design for Learning. We're doing our once a month, we meet with Katie Novak for a 2-hour session. We actually had one today to continually help us build upon what we know, and then to bring that to staff at staff meetings to continually grow our knowledge of UDL and how do we break down the barriers in order to make sure that all of our students are successful. This is what our Plymouth River level service budget would look like as of right now. Right now, this is our student population. Right now, we did drop in from last year to this year. We have 358 students in total. Last year, we had 374. We had a smaller kindergarten class come in, and we had a 4-section 5th grade class leave, and that's where the difference in the numbers are for that in Plymouth River. This is what our student ratio looks like to teacher. And I hand it on to the prestigious Miss Maurice.
Good evening, everybody. How are you doing? So as also with my colleagues, I always love to say we're all flavors in the ice cream shop, so we have a lot of similarities and just a few little differences, but we work hard together to always put the children first. So our goals are very, very similar, 1 and 2. Number 1 being to continue to encourage the academic excellence for all of South School, and also opportunities to develop physical and emotional well-being and awareness of social responsibilities. That's the triangle, 50% each side, right down the middle. And a lot of my colleagues who did a wonderful job have mentioned the MTSS program, and it's really helped to do that. I've been around long enough to we used to try to do this without the people, and we were successful, but not nearly as successful as we are now, and we're very pleased with that. So I would say, as everyone has said tonight, that is the most important thing, at least in my heart, for this budget going forward. Family and community awareness, very important. I had 1,000 views on my s'more, by the way, today, so I don't know. All right, there we go. He taught me everything I know on that one. So Anyway, so it is a wonderful thing, and people can access it from anywhere. It's kind of a funny story. I'm usually at my kitchen counter sometimes when I send it out, and my husband can't believe, like, immediately I get an email and there's 50 or 250 views. So people are looking at them, and they are reading them, and we do get questions about them, and that is great. So that's heart and soul of goals 3 and 4. And of course, safety is always a number one. I always say to the students, my number one job is to keep you safe. And then after that, we go from there and hopefully have ice cream sundaes. All right, moving right along. Oh, sorry, it's me. There we go. So that is what our budget looks like at this time. So all of this costs money. You know what my mother always used to say, you don't get anything for nothing, you know, you get what you pay for. So this is, and it's incredible to me that I'm seeing this. You've probably heard me use the analogy of the cathedral. I'm finally seeing it built, and I'm very pleased to see that it's built, and I hope that it stays built and it doesn't come apart. Because in 45 years, I've seen it get built, I've seen it get torn down. I've never quite seen it get built all the way up, and I'm thrilled that we're at that point, or hopefully close to that point. So this is a snapshot of our children, and I do want to mention that we have 2 town-wide programs as well. We have the Rise 1 and the Rise 2 program, and Rise 1 would be the K through 2 students from across town, and Rise 2, of course, are 3, 4, and 5. And today we had the visiting high school students. It was one of the best days of my life. The whole staff just loved it. They were all visiting the Rise classroom from the high school, visited all day long, and it was so exciting for us to see them and that they're all grown up and everything that they can do. So that was an amazing experience. And these are our numbers, pretty close to everybody else. I personally, my last class had 29 students in it, and I had no MTSS, and that was 12 years ago, or 13 years ago now. So I'm very excited to see that we have classes that are much smaller than that. And I think that class size and MTSS are the 2 most important things. And that's that.
Any questions, Matt?
Any questions for me?
So mine's, I guess, across the
Sure.
entire elementary school portfolio. So it looks like no efficiencies or reductions across, and no asks across. So I'm just curious, what, if any, efficiencies were considered and then decided, you know, we couldn't ask or couldn't eliminate? Is there anything that, you know, in an ideal world, the elementary schools would have, but can't ask for given budget constraints?
He's asking for the ideal world. As far as efficiencies are concerned, we are growing, so we, at least at South, and they can all speak to as well, we didn't really feel that we need any. But as far as, I have to be honest with you, it's kind of like when my husband asked me what I want for the holidays. I just always say a clean garage. So I haven't gotten it yet. It's been 44 years, but I will one of these days. So I would just say that for me, it would be, that the capital budget is kept up so that the school is kept in good shape. Because, of course, I saw South get torn down and built, and I'd love to see it last a lot more years. There isn't anything that I desperately need to have right now. I really feel like the cathedral is built, and we need to go forward with that. Does that answer your question?
I think one of the things that we had discussion around is the need for, and they can they'll shake their heads when I say it, social emotional programming to meet the needs. See, they're shaking their heads. Social emotional programming. The concern around, remember the Foster, the new elementary school will have some spaces for some programming, but we were concerned about planning a program without the building being built. Dr. Cataldo and I are going to start a small little task force to start to look at some social emotional programming, to sort of identify what those needs are, and then start to think about a long-term, short-term plan using current resources, but also looking for the future. I think space is predominantly one need, and then sort of some real purposeful planning about identifying the needs of the students and then matching the appropriate type of program. So we have a little bit of research to do starting now into the next school year to help us do some short-term, long-term planning. So am I correct in that need? Yes.
That would be
yes.
across all 4 buildings, yes.
If I could just add to, there were in fact some efficiencies in that we did reduce our textbook budget at the elementary this next year in order to offset some of the other costs. So we made our big purchase and investment in our reading program this year. We think it's important to really let that program settle for a year before driving forth other curriculum initiatives like the math program. So next year we'll be working, as I mentioned last week, on the math pilot, which doesn't have cost implications, but stay tuned for more information.
And that would
on
include some of the
following year.
licenses that aren't being used and things like that.
Technology as well. We
Right.
made some
Right.
edits to the technology budget as well. So there were some efficiencies.
Right. I thought you meant staff.
Yeah, it was all encompassing. I already forgot about last Thursday.
We had a meeting last Thursday? Just kidding. I'm sort of looking at what you were just saying right now, Dr. Adams. Are we talking about like a potentially like a therapeutic program within the schools?
That has been discussed around what type of programming we need in order to meet the needs of the students. We have some students that are currently waiting for placements, 45-day placements, evaluations, and there's just a 6-month waiting list in some cases for programming.
Yeah.
So creating some of those programs internally will allow us to better meet the needs of those students.
And to save money as well.
And in the long term, as Aisha says, by building the programs in-house, they will be more cost-effective. As well as keep the students, and Dr. Cataldo spoke about this last Thursday, if you remember. She talked a lot about we benefit so much when the students are in our community. The students benefit, the students with disabilities benefit, but also all of our other students benefit from the opportunity to interact with students across difference as well. So.
And I will say, I remember a time when we had those programs, and it was wonderful to know that we had them.
If you want to say something, Matt, you'll have to come up to this. You don't? You have to come up to the mic, hon.
No, I think just going back, I know I spoke about MTSS probably till I'm blue in the face up here, and I think for us as a team, we really feel it's a victory to keep the coaching that's in place that we have now, if at all possible. So I think I can speak for the four of us when I say that.
Carrie?
Yeah, I just wanted to, last year, we had a couple of efficiencies where there were, they replaced 4 paras with like a special ed teacher. Was that looked at all this year for doing something like that, or was it just not, didn't work with student needs, or?
I think that when we look at the paraprofessionals that are allocated, remember the majority of our paraprofessionals are special education paraprofessionals other than kindergarten.
Right.
That those are needed in order to meet the current IEPs. Although as we go through the IEP process and students are, needs are being reevaluated, there may be new students who need support and additional supports in the classroom, and there may be some who don't. So that's something that goes through the IEP process. So I don't feel that's something that we felt that we could do this year, again.
In last year's scenario,
You have to come up to the mic. Sorry.
They're not our. Get our steps in a room.
wasn't in the budget. So there are some, hidden efficiencies here that aren't explicitly stated. For instance, the expansion of some sections in one grade level versus the consolidation of others. Those don't need to be sort of broken out for us, but they have happened, I'm sure, at each of our sites. But specifically talking about the sort of efficiency that took place last year with special education and paraprofessional reductions. We had to have an educator for our, specifically talking about East Elementary. We needed to add a special educator in order to meet the special education caseload, especially considering that we were taking on the CLC from Plymouth River. So in order to get what we needed, and last year's budget scenario playing out the way that it did, the only way that we could guarantee we were going to get what we needed was through that efficiency. This coming budget cycle, we don't have an addition of a program or the need for a special educator, which speaks to the fact that we didn't have those things in place.
Thank you. Any other committee members? Allie, I don't want to leave you out in case you... Okay. Anybody out in the public have questions on elementary? I see 2 hands raised. Sorry. Hi.
Caitlin Kirk.
Do you mind coming up to the?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Hi, Caitlin Kirk, 12 Evergreen Lane, also member of advisory committee. I was just curious, how many open positions do we have across the elementary schools right now that we're recruiting for?
Sorry, I missed the question. I was looking at the removal of the names.
Yeah, sorry. Very distracting.
Yeah, like how many open teacher positions, paras, or special education?
We have no staffing positions. Any staffing positions that we're trying to fill are substitutes or long-term substitutes, so those for teaching positions. Paraprofessionals, I haven't checked in a week or so. I think. Yes, so Foster has 1, South has 1.
But we've also been able to manage that with
yes.
high-quality substitutes.
And the number changes because they had a loss of 1 recently, and so if you asked 3 weeks ago, it would have been maybe 0. At Foster, a week or 2 ago, would have been 0. Middle school, I think I heard you were at 1.5.
Sounds right.
And high school paras, 2 maybe? 2.
Somebody's coming back, right, into your building, so maybe 1 now?
Eventually, we could be back to 1.
Could be back to 1.
Yes.
So 1 South, 1 Foster, 1.5 at the middle school, 2 at the high school. But the number could change in a week. Yeah, so that's today's numbers.
We have Susie O'Horo, who has her hand raised. Yes. Susie, I know.
Hi, I don't know if anyone can hear me. This is Susie O'Horo, 7 Waters Drive, but I can't hear anything anyone's saying there, so I just raised my hand to let you know that no one in the audience can hear what you guys are saying. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I heard your reply, so.
Yep, it's turned red. We'll figure that out. Okay.
Can you hear now?
Susie, can you unmute and let us know if you can hear us
Yes,
now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Thank you, Ally. Thank you very much. Aisha's the tech guru.
The owl whisperer.
Okay, so we'll move over to middle school.
Yep,
Right,
so we'll switch gears to the middle school and high school. We also reshared student to staff ratios for the middle and high school. We've shared that a couple of times in preparation for the budget. We've looked at class size ratios at the K through 12 and including the middle and high school, and we've shared that a couple of times with you prior to this meeting. And I'll invite Derek to come up.
All right, good evening. Thanks so much for having us here tonight to talk about the planning for next year. Obviously, you've seen this before, and the numbers don't tell the whole story when you're looking at the secondary level, because a math class might appear to have one number here, but in actuality, it presents as different in the actual presentation and the implementation of those classes. So if I could just skip forward. Maybe I can't. Mary, what'd you do to me here? If you could. Thank you. Just to jump right into the middle school part of the presentation. Some of the priorities and considerations that the middle school has kept in mind as we plan for next year. We are still are experiencing a reduced enrollment from previous years. We are looking at that climbing slowly, but our numbers are still down from before the pandemic. But at the same time, the number of students with special education needs has increased at the middle school, and that's required some changes in our scheduling practices and our inclusion staffing. And we've been mindful of that as we plan for next year. We want to improve our enrollment and participation in our elective offerings, specifically at grades 7 and 8, where we allow students to choose what they take outside outside of the core academic classes, it makes it difficult to get to the numbers that we hope for in every section of, say, a music class or an art class or a drama class. So those are very important elements of our program at the middle school. We'd like to see our enrollment grow in those areas. And as we plan for next year's master schedule, we're making moves that would kind of funnel students into those classes to improve the enrollment in those. In addition to that, we're planning to team our 8th grade classes next year. We've never done that before at the middle school. We've had academic teams at grade 6 and 7 for as long as I've been at the middle school, and before that even, but we have not had 8th grade academic teams in quite some time, for as long as I can remember. So we're looking forward to bringing that in because we feel that aligns more with a middle school philosophy and giving the students what they need from a social, emotional standpoint. That has some implications in our planning for next year, and it is a small budget driver. We want to make sure that we maintain and strengthen our MTSS programming in math literacy and our social emotional learning, and keep an eye on our commitment to the continued support of the increased social emotional needs of all learners, especially in a Tier 1 lens, where we're bringing that instruction to all students on a regular basis at the middle school. Thank you, Sherry. Just a reminder of our goals that also help drive our budget decisions. If you look in a kind of a broad view, we have 3 goals that we are in the second year of implementation of, where we focus on the partnership between homeschool and community, the academic success for students in Goal 2, specifically achievement in mathematics, and Goal 3, where we strive to cultivate an equitable, inclusive environment within our school. All of those goals help make our decisions in terms of budgetary needs. And here you see the current budget for the middle school. And if we could just jump ahead, the subgroups that are represented within our middle school. Before I was saying how if you look at student to staff ratio, it doesn't always tell the real story. For example, we have 4 students who require ELL supports, but when you look at less than full-time ELL instructor to the entire student population, it looks like we don't have enough in place, whereas we do, because the ELL population is the size that it is. So that's just one of the things I wanted to point out in terms of the student staff ratio. We're hovering around 20% of special education students, 504 plans around 14%. There is some overlap between those two groups. Some students have both 504 and IEP supports. Some of those 504 plans reflect students with maybe a health disability or need that might not impact the academic progress of a student in the way that you would assume a 504 plan might support that student. And if we could just jump forward once more. When we look at decisions that we have to make for next year in terms of potential reductions at the middle school, we will be looking to reduce our library paraprofessional position. We currently have 2 people sharing 1 position in our library to support the day-to-day operations and after-school supervision in our library media center. We will look to reduce that, so that's a $28,000 reduction there. We currently have 2 math tutors who support students in grade 6. They do both push-in and pull-out services in mathematics. That's been in place for some time now. That would be another area for reduction, coming in at around $100,000. And based on our numbers over the past few years, we believe we can reduce our world language staffing by 1 teacher. We're playing with what that would look like, whether it would be Spanish or French, but that would be to the tune of about $78,000. All right, and those are the plans for middle school for next year.
Is that math tutors, is that sections or is that actual FTEs?
In which, I'm sorry.
Math tutors, is that?
Those are 2 people.
2 people.
Yes.
Can you discuss and share how some additional math teachers would be able to provide the MTSS that you're planning
Yes,
for
right.
at the high school and at the middle school?
Well, we're obviously going to do everything we can to maintain the MTSS programming that we've built over the past few years. Part of this is supported by our restructuring in grade 8 with the academic teaming and redeploying existing mathematics personnel who would be able to pick up some of these supports without the existing mathematics tutors that have been supporting grade 6 for several years now. So we're not looking to eliminate the supports, but who is implementing them. They might look slightly different. We may not be able to offer the amount of push-in support, but we do plan to continue to offer our math lab support services at all grade levels, 6, 7, and 8, for students who have a demonstrated need in those areas.
You want to talk a little bit about teaming in 8th grade and
Absolutely.
how it would better support special education students, because that's been part of our discussion.
Yes, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on this evening when I'm back up here to talk about our program of studies. But I'm very excited to bring academic teams to our grade 8 students. You know, for a long time we've said we're getting our kids ready for high school. We do this because we want to get them ready for high school. We do that because we want to get them ready for high school. But it's time to start getting them ready for now and doing what is best for them while they're at the middle school. And I firmly believe that the support and community that you develop with an academic team within a middle school is really going to get to some of the social emotional needs that we've seen emerge within our student population over the past several years. We are looking to have 3 academic teams in grade 8 next year, structured very similarly to grade 6 and 7. Math, science, social studies, and English as kind of your home base. And then we're going to associate special educators with those teams using the existing personnel that we have within the school. So we don't need to add any special educators. We just need to restructure how they are associated with students. And then it does build a small community for those students within our school. So our special educator would be assigned to, as they are currently have been in the past in grade 6 and 7, a special educator is associated closely with an academic team and a group of students so that they are closely connected to the work that's being done in the classroom on a day-to-day basis with our kids, and also how we are implementing and supporting the educational goals for those students within the classroom and outside of it with our strategies programs.
Any questions,
Any other
Matt?
questions?
So one question on the teaming, and I'm curious, did we get any feedback from current 8th graders, 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders? Like, what would the students say? Do we have any idea? Like, oh, this is great, I've been waiting for it, sort of ambivalent, or?
It's all anecdotal. Our current 8th graders would be, I think, ambivalent would be a pretty accurate description. They don't care what we do next year because they're gone.
For them,
I think our current 7th graders, if you were to speak to them, and I have casually with kids, and I know others have, I know some of our 8th grade teachers have done some informal polling of students. I think our 7th grade students are in favor of this. You know, there's a closeness that's developed within the school when you have those teams. They have their own identity. They have their traditions. They build a little community within a large school. So it's one of the things that I think is great about middle school is that you have small schools within a large school, and we're able to take care of our kids in a way that you wouldn't do if we were to go by what I like to refer to as the old junior high model, right, where you could have any configuration of teachers, as we do now for 8th graders. You can have any configuration of teachers in 8th grade right now, and they're all wonderful and they do a great job and they care deeply about their kids, but they don't have that common group of 85 to 95 kids that they can get together and talk about and compare notes on and better support. So I think the kids like the team things. You know, they like the team T-shirt, the team activities, the small competitions that take place here now and again. But I don't know that they realize just what they're getting in the background there.
That makes sense. And then just one other, just on the budget, same question, slightly different here. Obviously, you have a few reductions, but anything else considered from a reduction perspective? And were there any ads that you would have loved to have, but you didn't feel like you could put it on?
Well, in terms of things that we'd love to have, I'm probably the worst person to ask that question of, I always feel like we have a ton. Ever since I've come to Hingham, I felt like, compared to my experience in a previous district, when we need things, we're able to put them into place all the time. So I have a hard time saying I need more than what we have. I'd take it. I don't know what it would be, but if you want to give us something, we'll take it. But in terms of other areas for reductions, this is our first, our first look at this, and what we hope to do is avoid the impact to students and learning, right? So, as Katie mentioned before, we look at textbooks and subscriptions and materials like that. If we need to dig a little deeper as we go forward, the middle school will look hard at what we currently have and where we can be more efficient. And because I think that we need everything that we have, but there are sometimes opportunities for efficiencies as we refer to them. Right, Aisha? All right.
One of the areas the middle school's been impacted also is speech and language, increased speech and language services. As well as increased need for testing for special education and from the school psychologists. And the middle school has been a place, and we've seen the numbers there. And you're impacted, all of our schools are impacted not only by the students that we're assessing, who there's a referral either by the school or a parent, but we're also assessing students in private schools. And those are being also assessed by our staff. So those are also placing demands on what we currently have in place. So, and also the resources allocation through our team chairs who are running those meetings as well. So, and staff that are special education teachers who are also doing some of that testing.
Our team chair was covered by our IDA grant in the past, but we've brought it into the budget this year, and most of the tuitions are now being covered by the IDA grant. So that's what's happening as well. So that's where you'd find we have less being applied to the middle school budget now. Yep. So that explains, net on net what's happening. Okay.
Jen? Yeah.
The library paraprofessional, will that impact when the students have to, some of the times the students will stay after if they have a research project or something, will that impact that? Will that at all, the losing of that position, or will that still be an
We'll have to
option?
look at how we're able to appropriately supervise the library for after-school access for students going forward, because that is part of that individual's role at this time. They do supervise the after-school, the students who go to the library after school to work independently, or if they have research or anything like that. But it obviously is going to impact the way the library operates on a day-to-day basis. Our library media specialist also does some instruction of students, so when she's involved in direct instruction in our intro to TV production class or our grade 6 media literacy class, that's time where she's not available to support a teacher whose class wants to go in there to access the materials. They can still access the library, they can still get to the materials, but they don't have the benefit of her expertise or her para-educator's expertise in terms of the operations of the library.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks. Anyone else? Okay.
All right, thank
you
you very
very
much.
much.
All right. Good evening, everybody. A few comments on the status of things at the high school. Starting with budget priorities and considerations, ours would look similar to what you just heard from Derek, especially in the first point in terms of declining enrollment. We took a close look at current class sizes, department staffing, and offerings, and the reality is that our enrollment at the high school has been on a slow decline over the last 5 years or so, and we're just a tick below 1,100 students at this point. If we go back pre-pandemic, if we go back about 5 years, our enrollment was at about 1,250. So it's a significant reduction since then, and that creates a new reality for us in terms of staffing. At the same time, our commitment to offering a robust, broad, comprehensive program to our students and meeting the needs of our students, both academically and in terms of social emotional concerns, are as high or higher than ever before. So I think we could probably summarize this slide by saying our enrollment has declined, our needs have not declined. If anything, our needs are greater, perhaps, than they have been ever before, particularly in terms of social emotional needs. And so we remain very committed to keeping the full size, to the extent possible, of our staff so that we can meet those needs. Looking ahead here, our school improvement goals, I won't necessarily go blow by blow. It was only about 6 weeks ago that I stood here to deliver the year in review and to share our school improvement goals as we go through our second year with those goals together. I would say they present a picture of a school that is striving to develop a community that is stronger, that is healthier, that is more inclusive, that is more connected, both within the walls of our school and more connected in our broader community as well. And so that's our hope and really our mission as we move forward with those goals through their second year. And on our next slide here, an overview of budget from the last few years. I'm sure those numbers will look familiar to all of you who've been at these seats now for a couple of years. And this is a look at where those numbers would fall in the FY25 budget at level services. Here, again, just a look at the hard numbers and also percentage-wise where we stand in terms of students with an IEP, students with a 504, students who are defined as high needs, and our overall population as of today at 1097.
Can I ask a quick question while we're
Sure.
on that? Because the numbers seem like it's flipped on special ed students versus 504 plans compared to elementary and the middle school. Do you think is it the special ed students that are dropping down to 504 plans when they get to the high school, or is it not related at all?
I think that's a significant percentage of it. We do see a fair number of students who may have been on an IEP, but who, when they get to the high school, make a move away from an IEP, but still feels a 504 will be helpful. So I couldn't give you a specific number in terms of how many of those 212 at one time had an IEP, but certainly it is a significant percentage. Of those,
Maybe it's a
that number.
better question for Barbara when she's back.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good to know.
Some of those are medical and health needs as well. And it's not unusual. What we should be seeing is the number of special education students declining as they go through the grades in middle school and then into high school. You would see that across any district, that as students' needs are met and they're closing the gaps and they're closer on grade level, that the services are being reduced. But so it wouldn't be unusual to see those numbers. The number of 504s is high for a school, a high school.
Yeah, I would love to dive into that. Maybe Barbara can do it one day just to see if it's like medical diabetes or allergies versus social emotional.
Yep.
I think we had something last year that showed us the number of calls to Aspire, and like we saw the increase in the social emotional, and I'm just curious if that's related to this. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No problem. Great questions. So my least favorite slide here, but a necessary one, I think, in terms of where we stand now, a hard look at where could we help the district to make up some ground in terms of confronting the rising costs of running the district in the face of rising special education costs, rising contractual obligations, and so forth. These are the places where, through our common discussion administratively, we felt as though the district could, or in the high school in particular, could absorb a loss in staffing more readily than it could in other areas. I would say my hope would be that we could retain our full staff and continue to offer everything that we are now with the staffing we have now. But given the difficulty of that and the need for the district to make up some costs, these are the places where class sizes are small enough and where they're now and are projected to be small enough next year that we were better able to absorb a reduction in those areas than we would be elsewhere. So I'll start with retirement, two retirements actually, one in math and one in English. Veteran teachers, in those departments, the staff is relatively large, and our class sizes, again, we feel as though are places where we could absorb those losses. Also, in music, we're looking at some very small class sizes this year, particularly in some of our music electives. And although it's not something that we're at all eager to do, we feel as though this is a place where we may not be able to continue to run some of our electives with very small numbers. In a few cases, we do have electives now in single digits, one as small as 3 students, and it's increasingly difficult to justify the small class size. And then finally, again, within world language, we would likely be looking at the elimination of a position within Spanish. And that's really, again, a look at class sizes. Where can we absorb a loss in staffing? In each of those cases, I would say we're looking at, I mean, these are real people. And fortunately, in the first 2 cases, they're people who are retiring. And in the final one, it would be the loss of a person from our staff. And so, difficult topic, but one that I guess we have to confront. Jen?
It's just a ballpark. So if you have, I'm just trying to understand the impact on the class, how much of an impact on a class size. So say you have a math class that's, say, 15 kids, and you were to reduce the 1 teacher, how many, just a ballpark, is that going to raise it by 10 kids, or is it going to raise it by 5?
It's raising at a point that I think we can all be comfortable with, where we'd be looking at probably in the ballpark of 5. Yeah, I don't think we would be looking at a reality of classes that would be exceeding 25. We would probably have some that come up against what we like to keep as a cap of 24 or 25 students, but unlikely that we would need to go beyond that expectation of classes being no bigger than 25. Yeah, Tim?
I appreciate how careful and well thought out the reductions are. This is sort of the current snapshot of what our budget looks like. Negotiations are not done.
Right.
It's unlikely to get better than this, and frankly likely to become worse. How tight is the budget where it starts to impact the goals from your first slide, if there were more reductions,
Right.
when we start to really feel the effect on kids?
It's a good question, and
It's an unanswerable question,
It's
I
very
know,
difficult,
so-
right? It's difficult, and of course, it's in the context of what we all wish is that we didn't have to be worried about that bottom line as much as we have to be, and wouldn't have to look at the elimination of any positions. I had prepared a worse, we collectively had prepared scenarios that are more doomsday and more bleak than what we're looking at tonight, and hope we don't have to go there. If we do, I think it's a steady creep toward increasing impact. If we have to go deeper, I think we've already done some of the work to think about what that might be, but we're all hopeful that it won't be necessary.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
We've got Jim Quattromoni coming up. Good to see you.
Good to see everybody. Good evening. So we'll start this out with some highlights of the athletic program. It kind of jumped around a little bit here, but for the 3rd consecutive year, we were at 80% participation in the district, which is a number that I think, I'll mention this later in the 3rd bullet, but that I think our community should be very proud of. The resources that are provided and the opportunities that are provided. There are not a lot of districts that can compare to that. And so we have a sizable populations of kids playing on a lot of teams, 40 varsity teams, 22 JV teams, 9 freshman teams. 22 and 9 could be a little bit misleading in our league. We are allowed to go JV1, JV2 in the interest of maintaining opportunities where if we need to move freshmen around. For the 5th consecutive year, the Boston Globe, we've won the Boston Globe Holmes Award for overall athletic excellence, which is the adding of all of the varsity teams' records and the highest percentage is named the winner. I think this is even more so a community-wide award in that student athletes typically start on the youth level with their parents running the action, and then from there, the community is providing the resources when they get to the high school. The teachers are setting a standard of high expectations in the classroom, and then the last part of that equation is we add our coaches to the mix, and it really covers everybody that in our community in terms of just having a piece of such a tremendous achievement. This year, in February, I'm expecting to get started with some e-sport activities for different populations in the school. And then over the last weekend, particularly excited about 25 of our coaches participating in the training with the Center for Sport and Society from Northeastern. This training is part of the last year's initiative that started with the state, the Governor's Office, Attorney General's Office, and DESE addressing hate in school sports, with the goal of making high school athletics on every level a place that's safe for all students that seek to participate.
Part of the medical grant also covered the cost of that training as well. Mm-hmm.
A look at our budget for this year and forecasted, you'll see that there is a reduction for some equipment and athletic supplies. And then we are proposing an increase, so that it had been over 10 years before last year when we increased to 375, proposing an increase up to 425, and you can see the hockey differential will remain the same, slight increase to the family cap and the hockey family cap. And when you look at the surveying for the other communities in our district, we still fall in a reasonable range in terms of, especially when you're looking at 3 sport athletes. I think a particular driver in our participation number is that per year fee. You tend to have student athletes that are very interested in one particular sport, but because it's one fee, then they're willing to try other sports, and it doesn't come with any additional expense, with the exception of hockey and some of the crew programming.
You also remind what happens if a family can't afford the fee.
So if a family can't afford the fee, that they can apply for a waiver through the main office.
And I'm assuming that cost of ice time also goes up every year, so that also impacts.
Game officials, ice time,
Yep.
transportation, absolutely.
Tim?
I'm treading carefully with this question.
Sure.
Hingham has a lot more varsity teams than other towns of similar size. And one thing I hear from parents that I've heard throughout from before I was even on the committee was that part of the reason Hingham has budget problems, we have too many sports teams. That's sort of the third rail of Hingham,
Sure.
that we can't really talk about that in a serious way. I mean, we can, but what do I tell these parents?
So I would,
why are we seeing cuts from academic cutting teachers but not cutting teams?
So I would love to sit down and look at some of those communities with you or anybody else.
And I don't have data, like this is...
I will tell you that I've always, since I started doing this...
Take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, and thank you for the question. This is my 18th year doing this, and I've always counted, for example, a swim team. We have a boys swim team and we have a girls swim team. They operate largely as one team with one coach, but I've always counted those as 2 teams. So that would be the first place that I'd want to take a look at on what is actually being offered. The fact of the matter is, though, we do offer a large number of opportunities. And so, whether we're talking about we have, on average, 5 more, I think it's closer to that, 3 to 5, than it is 5 to 10. But certainly, and unfortunately, in my career, I've lived in a time where I oversaw an athletic budget basically zeroed out and had to work to cut teams, or come up with scenarios that if we were telling parents and student athletes that we were going to need to cut their teams to give them enough time to try to fundraise to be able to offer the team. There are some hard conversations that we could have that I think certainly are happening above my office, but with me included. And again, unfortunately, I have some experience in this world here of needing to make reductions. It's not one that I like to call on, but You know, if we need to get down and really look at offerings, we can do that.
I think one of the differences is the high participation rate.
Sure.
Which then, that's why you have so many teams, is because there's a large number of students participating. So I think that would be very different if you
Oh,
looked
yeah,
at
I
other
mean,
high
I think
schools.
it's a feather in our cap that we have so many teams. I'm just, some parents question whether we can afford it, is the reason I asked the question.
The other thing too that I always think about as well is that the social emotional learning aspect of things as well too, where sporting sometimes gives an outlet. And I wonder if, I guess, if it is that we did reduce some of those costs, would that mean that we'd have a spike in other costs as well? So that's the only thing that I would question.
Yeah. I'm not arguing to cut teams.
Right, no.
I'm just asking the question because it's a question that's in the community. that
Right, and
people
it's
say.
it's the one area at the high school right now where we collect all of the fees associated with it, and we also actually have a reasonable fee that's comparable to other towns as well too. So I would say in terms of that, the athletic fee does contribute a big chunk to the budget as well.
I would just add a point too. Dr. Adams earlier this evening was discussing how attendance has been an issue. Sports and involvement in extracurriculars is one of the most important drivers for student attendance at the high school level. So again, to Aisha's point, it is an SEL initiative, but also has attendance implications as well.
Thank you. Agree with all of that. Sometimes, yes, the unpopular question.
Echo that too, with the parent of a teenager who only went to school to play sports and got a high school education by accident, and then a daughter whose only interest in school is the arts and is also getting a high school education by accident because of her involvement in the arts. So I think that there are many students who come to school for those activities and that connection.
And just to add to Katie's point, not only from attendance perspective, but from an academic perspective and a behavioral perspective, it's a driver.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I love the sports that are no-cut sports. You've got, kids who might play a sport and they don't make it by the time they get to varsity, but then they have different activities that they can participate in, so it's great. Jen, sorry.
This is going to sound like a silly question, but I'm thinking about something else.
Okay.
related to it. So my question is, do you ever have struggle to collect the athletic fee, or is that pretty straightforward? Do you have to track people down? As we're talking about other fees that we're going to be collecting, I'm thinking about the middle school activity fee, and I'm just wondering if you
There is some chasing that has to go on from time to time, but we get it in the end.
Okay.
It does say in the handbook that we may deny athletic participation. We don't want to get to that point.
No, absolutely not.
But it is there for us to use if we need it. Kids don't want to be on that list where they have to keep coming down to the office to talk to us. They want to quickly get off that list. It probably, I'm imagining it in some people's homes, it's like that latest video game that they really want to buy. Did you pay my user fee yet? Did you pay my user?
Yep, I get that.
Anybody else? No? Okay, thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What's going on?
I don't know. My computer is freaking out.
I know. I have a question that's not specific to athletics. I was just thinking, listening to everything. And that is, sort of Tim alluded to it earlier, we're in the middle of negotiations, and this budget includes our current offers on the table, but not anything above that, and we're already looking at cuts. So, I mean, are we gonna, at some point, are we going to talk about what would happen? I'm just thinking of Andover. They just settled contracts, and they're sort of a cautionary tale, right? Because they're looking at cutting at least 36 positions. So should that be part of this discussion, or is that the plan to bring it to these meetings too? Or are we just going to wait and see and then decide then?
Yeah. Any thoughts on where we should go?
I think we've done some, and we could bring that to the February 5th meeting if it's helpful. If we've done as part of negotiations, and I think we've shared some information with the community, the impact of additional COLAs to different staffing groups and the impact that would have on the budget, and we can certainly share and reshare that information at the next meeting, what that impact would be of that kind of scenarios that we've run as part of the budget. And we could bring that to the next meeting, but as we described, this budget indicates what we've offered so far, and increases in COLAs would bring, or any changes to the salary schedules would impact the budget, and we'd have to look at where that funding was coming from.
I'm just thinking, we've done so much work to get to build the chapel, and we don't want to lose that. And I heard from all of the principals about the MTSS and how important that is. And so I just think as we do it, and I think it's important for the community to be aware too of the implications.
MTSS is not a program we've adopted. MTSS is people that are doing the work.
Right.
There is no MTSS without the people who are doing the work. So. Right.
Where we are right now, in terms of we've allocated the maximum amount of all our revolving. So when you look at our revolving, we've tried to allocate as much as we can in terms of making sure that for next year, for this year and for next year, and then in terms of, we've also, Dr. Adams has also tried to grow, along with the principals as well, the pre-K program to try to bring in revenue. So we've, not that we should actually be part of our business model in terms of trying to raise revenue, but we've also tried to work on those areas as well. So I think in terms of, from a revenue perspective, we're at the furthest we can go in terms of making sure that we can continue to keep a high quality school going as well. From a grants perspective, we're not 100% sure that next year we'll have the same level of funding from the federal government or the state that we've had in the past. But we've tried to make sure that in terms of what we've applied to the budget, we've applied based on what we know exists. And in terms of the town, what we've agreed to in terms of that 3.5%, I think that we've also included that as well, knowing we're actually going into this year knowing exactly what our budget is, which has never been the case before. It was always a question mark, and we'd vote on one budget versus another budget versus another budget, and reconciling budgets. So we actually know what we're going into, and we kind of came to that agreement last year with our override and everything else. So I think right now we know where we are, and any further decisions that we make, we know what is going to happen because of those decisions. So I think we can be very clear-eyed in terms of the impact of any decisions that we make. So I think it's just about making sure that we try to make sure that we keep Hingham Public Schools whole.
Just to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying, Aisha, you're saying that the money we have to spend next year is set right now, and any decisions that we make that would increase that budget are going to end up with staff reductions.
Further reductions.
Further staff reductions that have from what we've agreed to so far, have already caused staff reductions, that any dollar more that we spend will be more staff reductions.
Yes.
Okay.
And potentially other reductions or increased fees.
Yeah.
Increased fees. And we pointed that the middle school and the high school having decreased enrollment, we've shared those staff ratios. That's likely where the majority of the impact would be felt.
So the current budget, you had presented at the first meeting that we've got a 1.2 shortfall right now. Is the reductions that have been presented tonight, does that, is that net of what the 1.2 is? Does that close the gap on the 1.2?
It does, because what it does now is that I've done two things. I've maximized the amount of revolving impact, so there isn't a 1.2 gap, there's a 560 differential right now. And that is where that 560 is coming in, because I'm using the maximum amount that I can on revolving.
Okay. And then we could possibly still hear about additional retirements, which ends up saving us if we end up replacing, or no?
I mean, the only thing about additional retirements could help in that. I mean, our staff right now is at the highest level in terms, most of our staff is at the highest level. So any retirements would only help us. Are they likely? Over the last few years, I know we've had many retirements. I don't know that we are expecting any more, but it would help. And it would help, but we don't know of any. And most people would by now have let us know of those retirements in order to get the incentive.
So when we vote on a number, we already know what the number is that we're going to vote.
Exactly, except in the case of,
The
to the
special.
extent that there may be additional deductions based on any other decisions taken during negotiations.
Right, so it just impacts the further reductions. But the total number that will be in the warrant, we know what
Right.
that number is.
Exactly.
Can I just ask on that? I just want to make sure I'm understanding that. So I guess there's no scenario that the town could come and say, school, your cap was 3.5, but we need, 3 more policemen and 2 more firefighters, so, we think you should be at 2.5. Is that, am I not understanding the MOU? Like
Yeah, it's
the MOU.
it's a cap.
Yeah,
It's a cap,
cap.
okay, so it's
That's
not.
right. It's not a
I mean,
guarantee.
that doesn't
Not
help,
guaranteed. No.
this conversation.
Right.
I just want to be clear,
Yep.
that's sort of the
That's right.
highest it can go, but
Right.
there is a scenario that we don't even get that much.
Right.
There
Right.
could, yes.
Okay.
We're going to advocate for the 3.5
Yeah.
and
Agreed.
present a budget, but they could definitely say a different number.
Yes.
And I do agree with Carrie's point. I think just given all the moving parts, I think it would be helpful to sort of re-bring back on the following Monday, just a reminder of, what the dollar difference is between current state of negotiations and what that looks like in terms of,
The only sad thing about it is that, as Kerry mentioned, the Andover situation in terms of the number of people that are going to lose their jobs, and the Andover school system may be, to lose 36 people, that's a lot of people, right? Yeah.
That's a difference that makes school life more chaotic for kids, that
Right.
makes kids get fewer services, that
Yep.
have fewer data and information that allow us to educate the kids.
Right.
That's full impact across the board with 36 positions.
Right. And as Mary has said, we've really, I've only been around here for a few years, but I know that we've been trying for so many years to try to build up in terms of MTSS. And this is the only time this year when this last few years, we've actually we have been able to put the programming in place. And we're seeing the successes. We're seeing it. So it's just a matter of saying, okay, we want to continue seeing that success.
Any other questions?
you got a hand.
Hingham Education Association? It's not.
No, I think it's Jacqueline.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask a question, clarifying question, and comment on a couple things. This is Jacqueline Beaupre, sorry, president of the Hingham Education Association, homesick. I heard you say that if there was a deficit, the only option would be to reduce staff, and I don't think that's accurate. You could also increase revenue other ways, or you could request a transfer of money from free cash. That is a possible option, correct? And I'd favorably want your opinion, but that is an option, correct?
We did indicate that raising revenues was an option, so I said that, sorry, I wasn't very near my microphone, so you might not have heard me. And then, the free cash financial policy is that it can't be used for recurring operating expenses. It can only be used for capital and one time. And one time.
In your opinion, it shouldn't be used, not cannot be used.
Well, it's the
actual financial policy.
The financial policy that the advisory committee has indicates that it's not to be used for one-time, or recurring operational expenses. It's for one-time extraordinary and/or capital expenses.
In addition, it's the policy that states that it needs to be between 16 and 20% of the TAE, which is the total annual expenditures. And from my understanding, it's currently there.
Not only that too, but I guess in terms of paying salaries out of free cash, it's a one-time thing. And then what do we do next year? So we just be delaying the inevitable.
Right.
It would be delaying things, so we don't have to make cuts. One correction I wanted to make. I don't
Delaying
think
things so that the
going
next year you have to have
after
cuts again, right? Yeah. It's not a good idea.
I don't think the majority of staff are at the top step either, like over 50%. I think it's more like a third. So I would check that. And last, I was wondering if someone could please address the really inappropriate comments that went out on Zoom. It sounds like that didn't happen, and at the very least, we couldn't hear anything on Zoom, so can you please do that?
So,
we
I think that Sherry inadvertently unmuted the Zoom, but there was a mention by several members of the school committee that they apologize for the words that we use, that it's not representative of our school community and is not appropriate or acceptable. And I think other folks, unacceptable. So maybe we should repeat that again.
Because while people were muted, that they didn't get to hear that. But it's, I think you heard from a lot of the committee that was absolutely unacceptable.
Yep, and I was actually just going to say before we move to the next agenda item, if we could, because I was thinking addressing the hate that the school committee and the folks in this room and on the Zoom had heard as well, and just like take a pause to acknowledge that, because I know for myself, it was, like I'm still thinking about it, you know, and it was really awful, racist, threatening language, and it has no place in this, and I'm hoping that potentially there is some way, and I know this is an open public meeting that is recorded for the public, but I'm hoping we can maybe work with Harbor Media to at least get that blurred out.
Since it does not add anything to the media, it will be edited out.
Great. That's,
Thank
thank
you
you
very
very
much.
much. That's good to know. And then I'm thinking maybe as a town, because you know, in the moment when it's happening, everyone sort of panics and freezes and they don't know what to do. So I'm thinking maybe we can try to work something with the town to find better ways to shut that off, report the people. Sherry, I did thank you. I did notice that you reported it, so thank you. But thank you, Jacqueline, because I think people on the Zoom couldn't hear what we had addressed earlier.
Thank you to Sherry for shutting it down as quickly as you possibly could.
Yeah. I intentionally got on Zoom tonight just to make sure I could kind of help control that as well. So I was getting to the mute as quick as I could. Any other questions?
Looks like Laura back.
Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, the camera. Do you mind coming up to the, thank you. I can't see behind the camera, I know. Sorry.
Laura Achitella, 4 Boulder Glen Road. I just wanted clarification on the answer you gave, Michelle. I didn't understand. The caller on the phone had asked about other possibilities of raising revenue, and you had, I just wanted to understand the answer, because my understanding was a lot of revenue was raised last year, and there's nothing else in that well, I thought. So I was just wondering if you could be a little bit more specific as to what this person may have been inquiring about.
Yes.
Yeah, we have levers on the school committee, like fees, like athletic fees, for instance. That's our revenues, not the town revenues, not another override
But
revenue.
what other fees would there be? It seems like they've increased, there's nothing new that would be.
We could go in.
My point is, isn't that avenue sort of tapped out at this point, given what everything was done last year? So I don't like the sense that maybe there's this false sense in the community that there is more money to be raised.
And we were hoping last year when we did the override that we would not have to increase fees, and that was one of the things that we stated. We're one of a few districts who still have kindergarten that pays for the half-day kindergarten to have the full-day kindergarten, and we were trying to strategically reduce that amount, and that is something that we likely won't be able to do currently. We were working toward that to make sure that was done for the next time the town seeks an override.
Okay, that was my understanding, that the revenue sources were tapped out, so I was just hoping that everybody on the call could, hear that more unequivocally, so thank you.
Just to quickly add on to the point, I mean, yeah, look, if the difference was $30,000 at the end of the day, then yeah, absolutely, we should be debating, well, what if we raise the athletic fee to $475, I'm losing track of the number, $475 versus eliminating one position, if that's the scenario.
Right.
Where the gap is right now, of course, we should be considering fees as well to potentially, reduce the amount of in addition. But to your point, Laura, it's
The town has made the investment in its
There's not,
schools,
yep.
so there's not more investment to be made. So that was my understanding, so I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, and I was just talking about small incremental fee increases that could be unfortunately passed on to families if needed to close small gaps. But just that the question was, the only thing you mentioned was cutting positions. No one mentioned raising fees, and I was commenting that we did actually mention that we could potentially increase some fees or implement new fees. But to Matt's point, they'd be very small.
Yeah, they would not cover the $1 million of shortage.
Right.
Anyone else? No? Okay. Before I move over to the next agenda item, Tina, do you want to adjourn your subcommittee?
That'd be great, thank you. I have to adjourn ACES. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, thank you. Okay. So item 7.3, to receive an update on the middle school program of studies and act as appropriate. So I think we have Derek Smith coming back up.
Hello again. Nice to be back. This year for our program of studies, the middle school is making no substantial changes, no additions, no subtractions. There's some language changes in some of the science courses. We've stricken a sentence from the 7th and 8th grade course descriptions, but nothing that would warrant any real discussion. The only thing that I just wanted to bring back to your attention is our plan next year for the academic teaming structure for grades 8 and the benefits that we're going to see for our kids there. I do think that will help in terms of the development of a more comprehensive master schedule that will lead to a rise in enrollment in all of our elective classes also. But in terms of the middle school's portions of the program of studies, no real changes for next year. So nice and short. I think Rick's going to use my extra time. So thank you very much. Any questions before I step away?
We have to.
Tim, you didn't miss a thing.
Okay.
No changes.
No change. Yeah.
I don't know if there's questions.
Does anybody have any questions, comments?
I feel like we got it all right last year, so we didn't need to do anything
Yeah.
different.
All right. Anybody in the public have comments or questions? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, we have to vote.
Yeah, we're going to vote on that.
Do you want to make a motion?
Yes,
Is that
please.
a motion? All right, I will make a motion to accept the Hingham Middle School Program of Studies for the fiscal year 24-25 with no changes from last year's program of studies.
I will second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Matt?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Ally?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Thank you. Okay, 7.4, to receive an update on the high school program of studies and act as appropriate.
All right. Want to thank Derek for the extra time. We would probably put it to good use here. You got a rather lengthy memo from me, 14 pages in length, that summarizes changes to the high school program of studies. Fortunately, most of those 14 pages are devoted to changes that are relatively insignificant and probably not worthy of discussion. Lots of tweaking of language, changing some words here or there, in a couple of cases, changing the title of a course. But I wanted to just highlight a few of the more significant changes and a few things that are worth highlighting, including the addition of some new courses. These can be accomplished without addition of new staff, but as you know from reviewing the packet, we're proposing to add a new AP 2D art course that would run simultaneously with our current portfolio class, or drawing and painting 4. An AP Computer Science Principles course, a change within music to consider the adoption of an Intro to Guitar course that would offer an alternative to the Intro to Piano course that was introduced last year. Music department had done a survey to gauge interest among students and left with a sense that there would be a pretty substantial audience for an Intro to Guitar class. So we wanted to see what kind of interest really would be generated if we added that to the program of studies. We also wanted to formalize a course that was introduced late in the game this year, Spanish culture, and add a French culture aspect to it, as well as an inclusion class that gives an opportunity to lots of our students. It's been a big hit so far in its first year. Also within this document, you'll see that we're seeking to formalize some of the additional dual enrollment opportunities that have been piloted over the past year. to really good success and lots of our students enrolling this year to earn college credits for the courses they're taking at Hingham High School. We see some additions there, particularly within the math department, and have added that language. Also, as you know, because we talked about this as part of the school improvement presentation back in late November, we're also seeking to formalize the Pathways programs, the 2 new Pathways programs that are being piloted this year. They're analogous in lots of ways to our Global Citizenship program. One is in the arts and the other in technology engineering, and we feel as though both of those programs are off to a really good start and would like to formalize those within the program of studies, and so propose the language for that. And then finally, the one that is likely of greatest interest, the community service proposal that has emerged from some of our school council discussions over the past year and a half. And of course, we had some lengthy discussion about that issue at the previous meeting 2 weeks ago. And tonight also in particular wanted to thank some members of our school council who came out to be part of the conversation. I think at least a couple of whom would like to share some thoughts on that as well. So I don't know if you'd like me to welcome them up now to comment on the community service part, or if you want to look at the other stuff first, if there are any questions on other parts of the program of studies, and then come around to the community service.
On other things first. Okay.
Okay, great. Everything else looks okay and clear, hopefully, from the memo. Yeah.
So the credit for the fine arts, well, so it's changing from it was 2.5, and you're going to 5, but I just want to point out that the DESI data indicates that 100% of students are already meeting that.
Yes, when we consider that it's fine or applied arts, which is a relatively broad definition, so it would include courses within arts and music, it would include courses within family consumer sciences, within technology engineering, also even within some cases within an academic department like creative writing, within English, and business courses within social studies. So it's changing the expectation within the listing of credits from 2.5 to 5 credits in fine or applied arts, but our data is showing actually that literally every one of our seniors this year would have met that requirement at 5 credits, even though it's listed at 2.5. And this also confers the advantage of aligning with Mass Core requirements as well. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So community
Great.
service.
All right. So yeah, the bigger issue. So would you like me to kind of review anything from last time, or would it be appropriate to invite any? We have a couple of our student members of school council who've been part of that discussion over the past 2 years, who came tonight, and it would be interested in sharing some thoughts on that as well.
If you could give a quick summary on where we are. Are we suggesting that this is a pilot program, or is it something that you are going to implement next year, starting with the 9th graders?
A great question. I think it's appropriate to say yes to both. I think the hope is that we would introduce an expectation that all of our incoming 9th grade students would complete 10 hours of community service next year, in the hopes that it would prove successful and lead to a kind of rolling requirement for subsequent classes, and that going forward, next year's incoming 9th graders would continue to earn 10 hours per year or more until they reached a baseline of 40 hours of community service. But I would also say that really anything that we propose, including this, and maybe especially this, ought to be regarded as a pilot. And that I would want to give assurance to the school committee that we'll be rigorous in our analysis of this program next year, that we would survey students and parents as well, and bring back a full picture in the late fall, maybe, or whatever date was found to be acceptable, but no later than the midpoint of the year, for us to take a good hard look at how the program has rolled out in its first half year, and make a decision as to whether we feel like it's working well and it would be appropriate for us to continue forward. I do understand that there are concerns that some people have about this. I personally have a great confidence in it, and our school council does too, because of the process that we've applied, a really thorough, deliberate, and thoughtful process since drafting the school improvement goal almost 2 years ago. And I think we believe that it's going to be successful, but we won't know until we roll it out. And if we were here a year from now, taking a look at a program that had been underwhelming or we felt as though had fallen short of our expectations, I would want to be the first to say we need to make revisions, or even potentially this isn't working, we should cancel it, it's not working for our community. I don't expect that to happen. I believe it's going to be a difference maker in a really positive way for our school, but also would want to give assurances that if it's not working the way we had hoped, that we would want to make appropriate changes at that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear from the students.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So Ava Verholick, Izzy Whitlock, Griffin Blidner, all among our school members of the, or student members of the school council this year. So I had invited the whole group. If there's anybody that wanted to come be part of the conversation, at least sit in, witness real democracy in action, this would be a good place to do it. And if they were interested in sharing their thoughts, that they were welcome to do so as well. So
Could they get community service hours for showing up?
that's a great question. I'm going to say yes. Let this be the first accrual of community service hours, even if they're seniors. So who wants to go?
Yes.
Right. So if they have every right to be tired and deserve lots of extra credit for being here at all after 2 mid-years on Friday, 2 more mid-years today. So who'd like to go first? All right. Ava Verholick, who's one of our seniors.
Hi, everyone. I'm a senior at the high school, obviously, and I'm co-secretary alongside my friend Izzy. And like Principal, I'm sorry. Principal Swanson said, I've been on the committee for around 2 years now, and we've been discussing this proposal almost every meeting. So I just want to share some of my thoughts. Although I will be leaving Hingham High School in just a few months, I wanted to share what I think about this community service requirement proposal that I hope will be put into action for the future students that come to HHS. Throughout my 4 years at the school, I have been involved with several different community service opportunities, both in Hingham as well as outside of town. It has truly brought me so much joy to serve my community, and it has been such a large part of my high school experience. I have participated with SNAP Soccer, teaching students with disabilities how to play soccer and playing alongside them. I was part of the girls varsity soccer team for 4 years, and SNAP was something that the whole Hingham girls soccer program was involved in. It meant so much to us to be in such an amazing environment without realizing the hours we spent on the soccer field with these students counted as service hours. Well, unfortunately, my years with the SNAP kids are over. I now spend my Sundays volunteering at the Situate Animal Shelter. What I feel is most notable about these service opportunities is that I didn't spend my time doing them because I need the hours. That wasn't really a thought on my mind. I did it because I love animals and I love brightening people's day. The act of community service ultimately brings people together. And since our town of Hingham is all about coming together as a community to make this town and its people stronger, the community service requirement proposal will do just this and ultimately make people feel better about giving their time to others in need. I have heard some concerns about how it will add a layer of stress to students. For someone who has done at least 40 hours of community service throughout my 4 years at HHS, it has not brought me an ounce of stress at all. I know I'm just one person, but Izzy here and other friends who I've talked to who have done just as much, if not more, hours of work of service than me have agreed. This proposal will also help take any weight off of students trying to figure out what to do for community service. There will be a hefty list created of opportunities for students to choose from based off of their different interests. This allows for kids to get excited and curious for community service and reduce struggle by giving easy access to signing up. With mental health issues a great concern for my generation, especially, if anything, it should relieve students of some stress, make them feel like they are doing something good in the world by bettering our community. Additionally, I've shared this idea with my little sister and her friends who are currently 8th graders at the Hingham Middle School, and they seemed ecstatic about the proposal. My sister told me she wants to do exactly what I have done and volunteer at the various places I have. The obvious support that she and others her age have shown me lends a hand to backing up why this proposal would be an amazing start to this fall with her grade coming to the high school. Thank you for giving me your time and listening to what I believe about this community service proposal opportunity that would truly take HHS to the next level of being a great school. I hope you sincerely take into consideration what I have said and vote to pass this proposal to be off and running in September of 2024.
Thank you so much. Hi.
Hi, everyone. Ava just summed that up very well, but I kind of have similar topics. So I'm Izzy Whitlock, and I'm a senior at Hingham High School and have been a part of the school council since beginning of sophomore year. As a member, I attend school council meetings every month to discuss important topics regarding how to better Hingham High School in the community. I represent the voice of my peers and do best to vocalize what I think will benefit HHS as a whole. Recently, we've been discussing a new project, the requirement for 40 hours of community service during four years students spend at Hingham High School. This is only 10 hours per year. Although I'm a senior and will be graduating in the spring, I believe this will benefit all students throughout their years at Hingham. There are many ways in which students can meet the community service requirements, activities such as SNAP or helping out with youth programs, but also those who don't play sports have options as well. Student Council is a program at Hingham High School, and it's a fantastic way to be involved in your community. This year I was also selected a course called peer tutoring, and this allows you to take an elective where you can help students work for studying for projects and exams. Every day that I have done this, I have enjoyed this time and felt fulfillment helping a peer get through a challenge. This could also count as a credit for community service. As an individual, I have been involved in numerous acts of community service. After completing these hours, I feel not only content with the fact that I have made a difference in my community, but I also feel a weight lifted off my shoulder and other things that have been stressing me out with school or sports. Today, many struggle with mental health issues. Volunteering in these ways can help both with mental health, and I've also experienced this personally. I've helped out at the Hingham Food Pantry and have found that helping people stack canned goods and preparing them for those in the community is a great way to feel involved. I have also done community service hours at St. John's Church in Hingham, and they have motivated me to help others not only just during the holiday season, but at any point of the year. Examples like these show how impactful this project could be and how inevitable it is to pass this requirement. Being an active member teaches you to feel compassionate, reliable, empathetic, and leaving a community where you contribute to make a difference. And this is an accomplishment one should be very proud of. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Griffin Blidner. I'm a freshman, and I think I don't really have a written out proposal for this, but I do think that it would be a good idea. I know some people that are in the 8th grade class, and they do have positive ideas of it. They think it would be a good thing. I know that I am not going to be graduating, so I will see probably the outcome of it. I think it'll be good. To be blunt, I think that some people are would definitely benefit from being forced to do good things because it might make them do other good things and, I don't know, build on their actual emotional level. Because I think that it's important for somebody to have opportunities to be able to do good things, and I think that it would really benefit people, and I'm sorry, I don't know what to say, but I just think that it would be a really good idea to add, because it would make people do better things, and maybe somebody would consider doing it more if they knew what it felt like. Because a lot of people wouldn't really consider to do something unless they had it brought up to them, and people were like, you have to do this, and maybe they'd like it more and do it more. And also just to add a more engagement in the community, especially with the 8th grade having the civic engagement stuff. I feel like it would really go hand in hand with it when they tell you oh, you have to be more civically engaged. I think it would pair really well because it would actually bring that to light and put that in practice. And I just think it would be a good idea. That's all.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm very grateful to to all three of the student members who came tonight to be part of this, and two of them very veteran members of our school council who've been part of this from the very beginning, and Griffin, our newest member of school council. Really proud of all three of them and grateful for your participation, your contributions to this. And would be happy to address any other questions or concerns that that people may bring, either myself or perhaps you have questions for the students who've been there. Alex, of course, as you know, was part of the initial research because he was a member of the Student Advisory Committee last year, and really the original proposal was drafted by our Student Advisory Committee a year ago and shared with our school council last February. And so the proposal you have before you now has their fingerprints all over this as well. It was tweaked a bit at the school council level, but much of it really emerged from that Student Advisory Committee last year too. So if there are questions, I think any of us probably would be able to address some of those.
Can we just talk about, can you touch upon the cost again, if there is a cost, and then and then if we could just discuss the liability. Those are my two. I know we talked about it last week, but I just wanted to continue that quick conversation.
Sure. The cost we envision as really being very minimal. And in the early stages, we're very confident that we could rely upon some grant funding from local agencies to help support a program administrator to oversee the documentation of the hours. And in the early stages as well, it's an easier process because as we phase the program in the first year, we would only be dealing with one class, the 9th grade class, rather than the entire school, and documenting just 10 hours per student among those current 8th graders when they enter the high school next year. The number doubles the next year, grows again the next year and the next year until, if this were to go according to plan, it would be 4 years before we would be looking at it, the entire school being expected to document those 10 hours per year. In the early stages, we think a reasonable stipend for a program administrator would be in the ballpark of $2,000, and that we could satisfy that probably in a way very similar to what we did when the Global Citizenship Program was launched about a decade ago. We had help from the Hingham Education Foundation, and so whether HEF was interested in supporting this or another local group could get behind it, we felt very confident that we could do this without asking for any money from the district in the early going, but then would eventually want to propose that it would be a stipended position through the regular school budget. But again, I think in terms of bang for the buck, it would be extraordinary in terms of the value for students and the value for the broader community relative to the dollars that would be required to make this happen. I think this might actually be the most efficient program in the entire school district if it lives up to our expectations and to our hopes. In terms of liability, we did learn actually just a few days ago that I think there was a statement from the school district's attorney that it may be a little murkier than we initially thought. We thought we had a very clear understanding in the summer that this as a school program would not really be adding to liability for the district. I did hear as recently as Friday that there was a new statement that perhaps is worth investigating a little further. Our general sense, though, from speaking with other districts, and we know that this practice is really common, and that 50% of our benchmark districts have a similar program in place already. Clearly, the question has been resolved there. And kind of addressing the concern about liability, we had some connection with the people at Concord Carlisle, who we had mentioned in our previous proposal 2 weeks ago that this, more than any of the other districts, had provided the best model for us. And it's a school district that we think is a lot like ours and has built a program over a long period of time that we really have drawn a lot of inspiration from. Their program has been in existence for 40 years, actually more than 40 years. I think it's 42 or 43 years now, and has, according to the people we've talked to there, has not resulted in any sort of case where the district was liable for any damages or any incidents had happened as a result, which gives us a high level of confidence that if it's worked there and it's worked at other districts much closer to home, several that are neighboring districts to ours, that we would be able to resolve this. But perhaps we want to get some additional clarity from our own attorney, but we feel as though this really is a problem that should not hold us back. And that in terms of risk versus reward, the rewards we believe are really large, and we're highly confident about them. The risk we think is very negligible.
Carrie?
Yeah, I want to thank the students who spoke. I completely agree. One question that came up is, because this is going to be a requirement and part of the student's school experience, have you thought about how IEP teams might be dealing with this? Because some students may need that sort of support to fulfill this requirement.
Right, it's a good question, and I think there may be cases where it enters into conversation in team meetings. I think in lots of other cases it may not be appropriate for some students, but for others it may well be. And we would be determined to make sure that wherever possible there are supports in place to help a student meet the expectation and to have the benefit of those experiences. I would also just want to emphasize that we view the potential for in-school and at school, on school grounds, opportunities for students as well.
Yeah. But this will be on the team's radar, the team chairs and
yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think it just as any graduation requirement would be fertile ground for discussion and appropriate to discussion at team meetings, and that perhaps in some cases some supports would need to be built in.
In the educational field, community service learning as part of the curriculum has been a long-standing instructional model. And this week and last week, the RISE program at the high school, their theme during midterm was community service. And you heard that they were traveling across the school, spent a day at the middle school, giving back and providing service. So it's an opportunity that I think is accessible to all students, given that we think of the instructional day as well as an opportunity to provide access to engage with others in the community. And that's a hallmark of many special education programs like the RISE, could also be a component of CLC, of those programs as well. So I think it's something that could be an integrated part of our special education programs.
It's a great point. Opportunities to really enrich the experience of all students.
I think I spent a lot of time with this over the past couple of weeks and did some research too on some of the other districts do, and there's like a mixed bag of having in-school things, whether you can use helping a local neighbor out. So just thinking about that, I think some questions we still have a little murkiness on the liability, how it potentially works in with the IEPs. I think there's just a couple of things out there, but I mean, I know all of us value community service, which is why we do this work. So I think I'm getting comfortable with it as a pilot, like if we're piloting this for a year, and that maybe it's an expectation or an encouragement that students would do it, but that we need this pilot and then some sort of assessment to come back next year to come to the committee to decide whether or not we want to make it a graduation requirement. And then sort of to your point, the rolling hours, you could maybe prorate the hours that if we didn't, for example, if you were an incoming freshman this year during this pilot program and we approve it next year, you have 30 hours to do. The next class, and then from there after, the rest of the classes will have the 40 hours to do. Or I guess if we waited 2 years to approve it, it would sort of be a roll, like you would have, because I just don't want to, if every freshman isn't required to do the hours this year, then they would have to, I don't want them to have to make up 40 hours junior, sophomore and
So
junior.
it wouldn't be a requirement until the pilot program's over?
Yes, but hours they did do during the pilot could count.
I guess I'm a little confused about why we wouldn't make them required this year, just because the school committee next year could change it. You know, if it looked like it was going south.
Yeah.
And then to kind of like prorate hours and all that, that seems like it would get very complicated as far as like from an administrative point of view. So like, I guess I'm not understanding why we wouldn't just make it a requirement and then reassess next year.
And I'm the opposite, is I don't understand why it has to be a requirement before the pilot program.
I actually don't love that it's a requirement. Like, I thought it should just be strongly encouraged, and some of the reasons why, and I appreciate the students coming in here. What I worry about the mental health and the social emotional, and I understand that there is benefit to this. I worry about the student who is having a hard time getting out of bed and getting into school, and to add one more thing to their plate, we hear about the hospitalizations that are happening. I worry about those students. And the feedback that I got from the parents, I recognize that the student council, it's comprised of students who are already volunteering. I would love to get a survey of all the students to understand what their feelings are, and also the parents, because it's going to be on the parents to take some of these students to the volunteer opportunities, and that's the feedback that I heard. I had one person who had called about, she was in favor of, she's on the student school council now, she's in favor of doing it, but any other parent that I spoke to and got feedback from, they are adamantly opposed to this. They think it adds one more one more layer of activity that the students have to get done. They are then going to have to help their student get the volunteer opportunities, or get them to or from, and track it, and they're very concerned about that. So I would love to not only survey the students, but survey all the parents as well, once the pilot is...
Of the incoming.
Of the incoming, yeah.
Yeah, I would like to see a survey of the parents and students incoming, and then based on those results, make the decision on whether it would be a requirement or not.
Right. And I think we can say it's strongly encouraged. And, I think even just volunteering myself in high school, you end up talking about the volunteer opportunities, and peer pressure is wonderful. The kids will talk to one another about the activities that they're doing, and then the kid will say, oh, I want to do that too, and then they join their buddy. And then that might have the effect of having the kids wanting to do the volunteer activity and opportunities versus being told they have to. And you end up getting to the same read. Tim?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke in this meeting before about how my high school volunteer opportunity turned into an interest, which turned into a career, and I wouldn't be sitting at this table if I didn't volunteer with special ed kids in high school. That being said, we considered, like, instead of a requirement, maybe an endorsement, like the students who do this get a special sash and an endorsement at graduation, or, I don't know, like, that's not a well worked out idea, but like, somehow to even more strongly than what Ness is saying, to have an official endorsement that goes on your diploma or whatever, if you filled in this requirement. But for me, what's really difficult is that once you make it a requirement, then you have to be willing to deny kids a diploma who don't do it. And are we really at the point where we're willing to say, okay, kids who've passed the MCAS, who've passed 4 years of school but didn't do the 40 hours of community service, are we really going to say you didn't earn a diploma? That's a tough decision to come to for me.
I would say that this is a question we asked them at Concord Carlisle, and they told us in their 40 years they have never denied a diploma to somebody for failing to meet the expectation. And I would envision the same to be the case here. We've talked previously about the availability of a waiver. I think that happens across the board in lots of different ways. There's discretion at the school level. For a student where there really are strong extenuating circumstances, perhaps it's paralyzing mental illness with a hospitalization, as you were referring to, Ness, or a kid who just can't get out of bed in the morning. While we do believe in, both from the experience of our students, including those who spoke tonight, but also others who were part of this ongoing discussion at the school council level, but also from the research that supports this as well, that there are real documented mental health gains available to students who pursue mental health, which is why we really believe it makes our schools stronger, and why we really want to advance this proposal. Understand the concerns that are there, but also just really want to emphasize the deliberate nature of the conversation, and how this really was not on the whim of the school council, but rather a really lengthy process that emerged from an 18-member group last year and a 15-member group this year, where they really considered, and there was a lot of give and take around that table, and plenty of us, myself included, actually were not initially sold on the merits of this, but came around to see the legitimate benefits. And if our job as a school council is to make our school better, I feel like that's my job as a principal, and that's our mission as a school council. We believe this is a fundamental way and really important way to make our school better, and we think it will. If the school committee were to reject the proposal and say it's not comfortable with it, we would, I think, want to go back to the drawing board and present something that was more palatable to this group. But what you have before you now really is the result of a careful process that has been debated and analyzed at some great length over the period of time for a year and a half.
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable piloting it. I think what my thing about making it a requirement right now, it feels like a graduation requirement is a big step, and I don't think, like, I don't want it to be something that we put in place, but then next year we're like, man, it didn't work out. So I'd rather pilot it as a potential graduation requirement. And the language about prorating hours and stuff, I mean, that's all stuff we can, to be determined, right? Because you might say, hey, you know what, we piloted it, and actually we want to make it 60 hours. Or maybe 40 hours is too much. So I think where I am is that I had drafted up some thoughts on it and saying, like, beginning with the class of 2028, Hingham High School will pilot a potential graduation requirement of up to 40 total hours of community service to be completed between the summer prior to entering 9th grade and, pick a date, I said June 1st, but maybe it needs to be a little earlier, of the student's graduating year. All incoming 9th grade students are encouraged to participate in the pilot program, and at the conclusion of the pilot, an assessment of the program, which we could leave up to the principal's discretion how to assess that, but I had said including a survey of students and the administrator or administrators of the pilot program would be provided to the school committee for their consideration of making this a graduation requirement. So it starts the program, it gets it started, it encourages, you could change encourage for expected, to make it a little more teeth to it. But I think it gets it going, it gets the expectation out there that this potentially is coming, but it gives the school a year to figure out sort of a lot of the logistics, the liability piece of it, the IEP piece of it, if that's a part of it. The cost, how much work is going to be involved in it. Is it something that someone's going to sign up to be an advisor for the dollar amount we're proposing, or is it going to be more than that? So anyway, that's what
I would encourage if it not to change, once the freshman class comes in, it's a good rule of thumb not to change graduation requirements, so that if it was a pilot moving forward for them, it would be the next class that might or might not have it required, because it's just being encouraged in the pilot. Because it's not a good idea to change graduation requirements in the midst of the already accepted class. So.
Yeah, and my point with that, I don't think it's going to fail. But it's not like we're going to make this decision right now and then we're locked in and we can't do anything about it. If it did go south for some reason, but I don't know. And I worry a little bit about letting the perfect get in the way of the good. Because it's going to take time. So Concord Carlisle took 40 years to build their program. It's not going to be perfect on the first way, but I think it's a step in that direction. It's a statement that we think this is important, and I don't know. I think we have to be careful with that too.
But I mean, I think piloting of it is pointing out that this is important, and we're expecting, encouraging, whatever word we want to use there, sort of sets the tone that this is the direction we'd like to go. Because like if you look at Concord Carlisle, just there's an entire community, parent community that puts together the volunteer opportunities. We don't have that right now. Some of the schools, I think I looked at Lexington, doesn't allow students to use their study hall to do community service in school. So there's a lot of pieces to it that I think need to just be worked out.
Yeah, and I heard from a few
parents.
parents. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you want to come back up? Sorry.
No, that's fine, absolutely.
I always want to hear from students.
that you were worried about like mental health issues. Coming from somebody who has gone through a lot of mental health issues, I have had points where I tried to fake sick so I wouldn't have to go to school because I was so sad that I just didn't want to be there anymore.
Yeah.
I think that it would do more good than harm. I think that it would be better than you think it would be. So seeing people happy has been proven to, make other people happy. It's like doing good things can make people happy. It made me happy. It helped me get out of being sad. I went to do new things and it made me a lot happier. Now I'm, better. I think that it would probably contribute more towards improvement of mental health than it would be more adding something to somebody's plate. And I think that it would just be a lot better than you think it would be in this situation, because I think it would improve mental health coming from my own experience.
I appreciate that. Mental health is probably the thing I'm most worried about, so I appreciate your feedback on that, on sharing your experience. So thank you. Katie Sutton, you want to come up?
Did Katie just say Huck is going to pay for it? Thank you.
So I'm really grateful for all the time you guys are spending on this. I think it's really important that we interrogate this and that we move, carefully. I would go with let's not let perfect be the enemy of good. And I also think that doing a pilot that's not required is not going to give us enough data to know how this is going to work. I feel like it needs to be required in order for the program administrator to know how much work it's going to be. Because if I know my kids, and if they saw that it was expected, they would be like, that is nothing. That is not something I need to worry about this year. Moving on. So I feel like unless we say, look, this class is going to be asked to do 10 hours of community service this year. It's a pilot program. We're going to see how it works. We thank you very much for your service. And then if it ends up not being a thing, then they got probably some good experiences out of it. And that's not a terrible thing. That is not a tragedy. So I would just say, again, especially from the perspective of someone who might be doing a lot of work on this program next year, I don't feel like we're going to be gathering enough information and really able to understand how it's going to work unless we made it a requirement. So I would just kind of push for that.
I completely appreciate that. I think because we were right in the middle of midterms and I have this even-keeled sophomore who never gets riled about anything, and seeing her riled right now is very concerning, and I worry about,
But right now isn't the time she'd have to do it, right? She could do it.
Completely understand. It's
all
just
year.
Right. It's the impact and adding one more thing. And I always worry about the state adding one more thing, but they don't ever take anything away, and they don't extend the school day. They don't extend the number of hours in the school day, but they continue to add more mandates. And it's like, how do you work it in without stressing out the kids and the teachers and everybody else?
I understand I understand what your point, but I think one of the things is if we require it, then we have to have some of these things already flushed out about how does this impact the IEP? What's the liability for it? What are we going to allow students to use study halls to complete their service? Those are the things that I think that's the only issue. We don't have that worked out. And given how many kids already participate in community service, I do think we would have a pretty large data set to work with to figure out what the program is, particularly if we use the word are expected to participate in the pilot program versus just encouraged to.
I just want to say to the IEP point, though, it sounds like that's not something that has to be fleshed out. It's already.
I talked to CPAC about it, and they had some concerns about it. So
right, but they just answered it.
I'll just put out there.
But I think the answer, well, whatever.
Just to be mindful that these are ninth grade students coming in, first experience at high school. When you just mentioned when you're a sophomore, they've already had a year in, and I'm just thinking back to when two of my kids were freshmen and how stressed out they were just that first half of the year as freshmen in high school. The homework load, class load, and just to have that requirement also on their plate. Just something to think about.
I mean, for me, it really comes down to the liability that we really don't have a handle on, if this is a requirement. Because right now, you can put a disclaimer like Concord Carlisle's, in the Concord Carlisle website, that I think it's a 501c3 team of people who are putting the opportunities onto the website, and they include a waiver on there that says we've checked these out, but we're not, use them at your own, use these programs at your own risk. And I just think we haven't flushed that part out of it yet.
And we heard from a few parents that mentioned their children who are in private school, and they referenced how their private school runs it and how they have a whole department that is responsible for overseeing the collection of the hours. I appreciate the parents that reached out with that information, because I hadn't thought about that.
Slater?
Yeah, hi. I think it's important to note of the possibility for like student orchestrated or student led opportunities. Like last winter, I helped box for the Veterans Appreciation Club, and we helped just box things in boxes. And why couldn't that just be done in the cafeteria during a study hall or outside right in the back parking lot? It doesn't have to be an outside source of volunteer hours. It can be an internal source, and we don't necessarily, it could be beneficial to have this infrastructure, but it's also important to note that there could be internal infrastructure to this opportunity.
I love that. That would probably get me over the hump, that if it was something that could be done in school and there was that opportunity, then there's no added pressure for the parents to get the kids to whatever the activity is, and then the student doesn't have to stress out about, they've got their sports and activities and homework and jobs that they have on top of doing volunteer work after school.
And I'd like to note that when in school, is particularly Hingham, when my friends see an opportunity to go help out with SNAP Kids, go help out with Unified Basketball, it's definitely like an urgent as like group movement to do this fun thing and help out because we enjoy it. And I think if we introduce that into the school community, like in school or even as an after school activity for the 30 minutes from 2:30 to 3 o'clock, maybe out in the field, if we implemented these, it would get a lot of reaction, a really positive interaction reaction.
Yep, be great.
I would add, this was very much part of our conversation at the school council level too, and I think it's at least alluded to in the proposal, but perhaps not as explicitly as might have been helpful, that we were very clear at the school council that we envisioned students being able to satisfy some of these hours during the school day, during a study hall, whether it be through peer tutoring, whether it be a green team volunteer who brings out the compost and the recycling after lunch, whether it be a member of the Breathe Out Club who's trained as a peer facilitator, meeting with 9th graders during their PE classes to address mental health topics, or perhaps a number of other possibilities that may arise during the school day. But we thought it was important that this could count, that it didn't necessarily have to be outside the school day. Realistically, 10 hours of community service could be completed in a day and a half over the weekend before the school year even starts, just to keep in perspective what a relatively small amount of time we're talking about. And we did find schools that were asking for twice as much. We thought the 40 hours was very reasonable over the course of 4 years, and just 10 hours per year, which very well could be completed within the boundaries of the school day. And I agree with you, Slater. There are lots of ways that could happen. And we're sure that many of our students would find opportunities to do that, and many would surpass, would go well beyond that. A peer tutor who peer tutors throughout the course of the year would get 10 hours of community service within the space of probably 2.5 weeks. But again,
Also, in my experience, the athletic teams are also engaged in quite a bit of community service.
many of our teams do extensive community service, whether it's engaging with charities and fundraisers, or the example that Ava Verhala gave was a great one as well, the volunteering with SNAP Soccer. SNAP's involved with so many sports in town, so lots of our teams are connected with SNAP. and with lots of the other charities. Some of them local, Maddie's Promise, some of them nationwide like Dig Pink with our volleyball team, but there are plenty of examples where our student athletes would reach that benchmark purely through involvement with their teams.
And some are providing support for youth sports as well?
Yes.
Like clinics and?
Absolutely, yeah, volunteers who may be helping out at the evaluations for Little League or doing a clinic with youth soccer or youth football or youth volleyball, what have you, as the case may be.
Slater.
And just to add on to that, in my experience over the summer, last summer, I spent in just one of multiple weeks, I did 40 hours of helping kids learn how to row. 8 hours a day, and it was fun for me because I love rowing. I enjoy it, and it's just teaching incoming freshmen and younger youth on how to do it. It was really easy. It was no stress. It was completely my choice. It could be as much as throwing a frisbee with another kid outside. It's a part of a club or just a snap kid. Who knows? It's endless.
Yep.
If the concern is the graduation requirement, in the same way for MCAS, there are, from what I understand, maybe you know better than, you probably all know better than me, there are requirements that if a kid is not able to complete the MCAS, there are like ways that they can be even graduate even with not passing the MCAS. Is there some kind of lever that can be put in so that if the biggest concern is about graduation, that you put that lever in? For example, if a kid is very ill or is not, there's some kind of like exception that can be made.
There is one in here.
So in that case, the graduation requirement is not really an issue, is it?
No, because there would be a way for a student to get
Right.
permission to not complete the requirements. Yes, I think, again, for me, and it's just, I think there's some more things around this to work out. And I'm just thinking, at the beginning of this, you did say you were viewing this as a pilot.
Yes, I view everything in this 14-page memo program of studies as a pilot.
Right.
If there were any course that's not popular, a course that is not successful, as the case may be, I think we should apply constant, rigorous analysis to everything that we do
Yeah.
and reassess constantly, and particularly if it's something new. Right, this is a departure for us. I wish it wasn't. I wish we had a program that existed for 4 decades like Concord Carlisle. They could be super proud of what they've built. And I feel badly that that does not exist here. And I think we have an opportunity to do it and show that it's an important value for our town and for our community. I'll feel badly if we don't. And I think now is a great time to launch it. But I would absolutely want to bring to bear full powers of analysis as we roll it out to say, is it working? How can we make it better? Is there any fundamental flaw that's preventing it from being successful? I'd be very surprised if that were to happen, but we would need to be prepared to make changes.
Yeah. I guess where I'm coming out on this is that I would view it, I think it's a wonderful thing. I think it has lots of merit to it. I think students will benefit greatly from it. There's, I think, definitely some things to work out on it. So I think piloting this, and we could, just rethinking it, we could pilot it as a requirement for 9th grade students. I am just not ready as a school committee to approve the graduation requirement piece of this. So I would be okay requiring a pilot program that required up to 10 hours of community service in 9th grade, and then come back, do the assessment, give us the assessment, how did it go, how much did it cost, how much work was involved in it, and then we could vote on whether or not to make it a graduation requirement. Because I think that is a big, I think adding something as a graduation requirement is a pretty big step.
For me as well. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I've spoken enough about this.
So I'm torn a lot on this because I hear the speeches here and you're like, how can you say no to that?
Right.
But then, I get the emails from parents saying I'm very concerned about this. And I think where I come down from a graduation requirement is if like 60% of the parents and 60% of the students were saying like, we don't think this should be it, like ultimately it should be a graduation requirement, I think I would side with that. If 30%, I don't know, I'd be torn, so, and I just don't know. I feel very confident that There are many students, especially the older students, and we heard a younger student here that I guess left, that do this already, and they get a ton of value out of it, and they see their friends and they get a ton of value out of it. But I do think there's this other population that would, if they did it, would get benefit out of it. And so that's where I'm torn. I'm like,
exactly.
oh, that's a really good thing to sort of force them through this to mandate it.
Yeah.
But I don't love mandating.
I mean, one thing that's clear from Concord Carlisle is that they have the support of the parents, the support of the community, the support of the town. And I think if you're sensing sort of a chilling in the room, it's like, I think we all got email this week that we're not there. We have more work to do with the parents of the town to get them on board. And maybe that is part of the pilot, is getting them on board. But I don't think this program has widespread community support right now, and we need to get there if it's going to be a graduation requirement.
I think I'm still not okay with making it a mandate, even just for the freshmen.
I want to recognize Ally because she hasn't spoken yet.
Oh, sorry.
Nope. And then Alex, sorry.
Over here. No, I just wanted to add to what Michelle was saying, is that I think there's a lot of value in it. I totally support encouraging volunteerism with our students, and I appreciate what all the students were saying. My concern, after hearing from a lot of parents this week, is what everyone in the room's kind of been saying. I don't think that support's there yet, and I think a lot of it is because parents are concerned about the burden falling on them to help their student manage it. And to me, it requires a little bit more structure. Some of what Slater was saying about finding opportunities that can happen during the school day, and that requires work. And I don't think that work has yet been completed, because someone will have to come up with those opportunities, be formatting them in a way that can work during the school day for kids, making sure that time's available. And I think it requires a little bit more work around that piece of it. And I think it could be very successful. But, having a year that we're piloting it would allow that type of work and review to take place, and see if we can find those opportunities so it's not an added stress for anyone.
Alex.
Yeah, I think part of the benefit of mandating it as a pilot, and one of the main complaints I'm hearing over here right now is that there's not popular support for it because people are concerned that it would be an additional burden. But like Ava, Izzy, and Slater have all said, in my personal experience, I found that 10 hours per year is not a major burden. Even with COVID and everything, I've pretty easily met that requirement. So I think part of getting over that hurdle would, just having that as a requirement for the pilot program would help people get an idea that it's really not as overwhelming as people might make it out to be, because I think people hear the 10-hour number and they think of it as like a 10-hour test or something, when it's really more likely the student will do maybe 4 hours, and 2 hours, which spread across the school year is a pretty negligible workload in my mind. And like we said, there's the waiver to get out of it, so if parents and students really need that, I'm sure that they will utilize it. But for everyone else, I think they'll find that the 10 hours is really not so overwhelming, and the pilot will definitely help produce that 60% figure.
So I'd like the thought, I guess, where I struggle is, like, what does it mean that we're putting a 10-hour requirement on ninth graders? Like, I mean, if nobody did it, what are we going to do? But, so I struggle, like, what is that required? Like, you don't get to go to 10th grade, you don't. I'm not trying to be I'm really honestly not. I just everything you just said makes total sense. And as you were saying, I was like, oh yeah, I think I'm behind that. But then I started thinking, like, well, but it's not. I just don't think it can be a requirement if there's no consequences. It can be an expectation or a hope, but.
I respect what you're saying, Alex, and I do think that it, for maybe it's a majority kids, that it is easy for them, but I do know kids who have struggled with getting the National Honor Society hours, whether they didn't either get it the first semester and they had to wait. And I do know students who have struggled to get those hours. I just don't want them to think that 10 hours for some kids is easy. I do think that it's not easy for everybody.
And you're doing the math, like, if eventually all 4 grades do, it's 1,100 students, it's 11,000 hours, 11,000 volunteer hours that eventually needs to be out there. Opportunities need to be out there for kids. It's a lot. After the 4 years are fully engaged, yeah, so.
But remember, many of these can be student-led projects.
Yes. Yep.
Clothing drives, fundraisers for different projects. They're based upon student interests. And we heard that many of the students are taking advantage of those opportunities through clubs and athletics, youth sports, providing for their community at the school. So I think that there's a lot more opportunities than we think. But I definitely hear that we need to do more work with the community and the parents to engage them in all of the things that our students are currently doing and all of the opportunities that are available at the high school and beyond for them, and document those. We're going to chime in.
Yeah, and I was going to say, if we're going to approve this pilot program, then I'm certain there would be increased student interest in such programs, and there would be more student-led volunteer hour opportunities within the school. And if there is the expectation that students are going to complete those 10 hours, I'm sure the school itself would provide those opportunities within the school and find ways to encourage students, because they'll be able to track throughout how, to some extent, how well students are keeping up with the volunteer requirements. So I think if we were to make it a pilot program, there would obviously be some effort to make it more accessible for students than it might seem at the moment.
I'd like to point out another example of it working is Stuco itself. The students and Ms. Viola, the advisor for that club, actively provide the opportunities. And if this pilot needed infrastructure for that, I myself would be willing to join that effort to create, whether it need to be a club or some other subsidy, to provide that infrastructure for opportunities.
Did you hear that, Rick? You have him for another year, so we're signing him up.
Yes, I'm very grateful for this. You know,
A student wanted to do something through Stuco and all the spots were taken up, then would you create more? Is that?
Sure. I mean, why does there have to be a limit? And of course, there might be some areas like you can only have so many people in the food pantry,
Sure.
but there are more days to be in the food pantry. There are more studies to be filled. There's like lunch blocks. There's all these time, like everyone has a lunch. Anyone can spend it however they would like. There's a lot of time slots within the school day, right after school day, easy, accessible throughout the year. And 10 hours is not a lot, and it doesn't have to be that number. But if you think about how much time we spent studying relative to 10 hours, if you did 15 minutes a day, you'd be done in, 2 weeks? Like, it's not a lot.
you probably studied 10 hours this weekend for today's
Yeah.
mid-year exams,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Probably.
Yeah.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Laura. People tend to sit right behind that camera.
Alex and Slater already earned their 10 hours.
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
sitting
Advocating.
You can get that in one meeting.
Way ahead, exactly.
Laura
Alex is
Achatella,
like, check, I'm done.
for Boulder Glen Road. Michelle, thank you so much for the suggestion of a grade 9 requirement. I've been thinking a lot about this issue, and I think having, as the parent of an 8th grader, so an incoming 9th grader, I am in support of this. I understand all the logistical needs that need to be met and the different barriers, but I do think if we call this a grade 9 pilot, that we're not going to get that data collection that, Katie points to us really needing. And it could also be a really good community building exercise for the 9th graders if it is a requirement. And perhaps it would build a next generation of leaders, people who are wanting to build out this program. And I think perhaps, can Aspen be used to help in this data collection? Can Aspen be used to help in even soliciting some feedback? But unless this is required just for grade 9, and then let's say someone doesn't meet the requirement, they can't get all the hours, they could maybe fulfill that requirement by writing a statement as to what they learned from it, why they couldn't meet this challenge, and that in itself would be a good exercise. But it would be something that the whole class would be participating in some way. Maybe as a leader, maybe as someone who's volunteering for the first time, maybe someone who is realizing how to overcome adversity. But I think making it a ninth grade requirement is probably the best compromise. And I know committees are all about compromises, right? You know, I so respect all of your opinions, and my mind has been changed by a lot of your comments tonight and the past week over the phone, but I think the grade 9 requirement seems like a good compromise. So I hope you will consider that, and using Aspen as a data collection tool, and I'm sure there will be parents that will want to help in you know, rounding this out. So
I will point out that the requirement for grade 9 was the original proposal.
Okay, I would
because it was
just
started
join-
because it will start with the class of 2028 as a requirement.
But not a graduation requirement.
Not a
Yeah.
graduation requirement.
Yes,
Yes.
that's the difference.
So not being graduation required, but
Yes.
a requirement with no penalty. Is that what you were asking?
To be
To be
No, I mean, I don't
determined.
think there doesn't need to be a penalty to it. It would just be I mean, it's just something you're required to do. And then if you,
I think Laura's point was that there's no penalty and there's no stick to it. That, correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, but if there's no penalty and it's not really required, then we will not get good data from it.
I do think calling it a requirement.
what is enough. I don't think we need to include, and if you don't do it, X, Y, and Z is going to happen. I think just
Okay.
saying it's a requirement
Thank you.
is, yeah.
So it sounds like there is some consensus on it being required for the ninth grade next year. It's going to be a pilot program. We're not going to make it a graduation requirement, but we are going to review the outcome of the ninth graders doing this next year. And I think
We're
Michelle
right.
had pretty good language, so if you
I
want
know,
to.
I'm throwing that all out there. Are you
I'm ready for a motion. Yes, bring it.
All right, so the motion would be to accept the Hingham High School Program of Studies, which is really why we're here tonight. With the.
I thought we were still talking about the therapy dog.
It feels like it, doesn't it?
With a proposed change to the the community service graduation requirement to, the change would be to allow this to be a pilot program that will be required, beginning with the class of 2028, we will pilot a community service requirement of up to 10 hours per year? Of up to 10 hours, period. Let's just leave it there. Of up to 10 hours.
Or 10 hours, I think
Up to
10
10
hours.
yeah.
Right, because up to 10 hours could be
Oh, yes,
30
okay.
minutes.
All right, so we will, beginning with the class of 2020, the Hingham High School class of 2028, we will pilot beginning with the class of 2028, incoming ninth grade students will be required to complete 10 hours of community service. Period. At the conclusion of the pilot, an assessment of the program, including a survey of students, parents, and the administrator or administrators of the pilot program will be provided to the school committee for their consideration of in implementing a community service graduation requirement.
Sounds great. Somebody want a second?
Did anybody get that down?
Got it on video.
Video.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion,
sorry.
Matt?
Yep. So I don't have a better suggestion right now, but I don't love mandating something. I think I'm not convinced that the people that have spoken up won't be concerned about this. And the 8th to 9th grade, we're now sort of forcing it on these 9th graders to not, who during a time of bigger transition to do the 10 hours when versus, the original proposal where you could actually not do the 10 hours the first year at this big time of transition.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I like the original proposal better, but I guess that's my reaction. So I'm not sure I'm comfortable, but I think I'm going to be in the minority, so that's fine.
What if it was a smaller amount?
I was just gonna say, what if it was up to 10
What if it was
hours?
5 hours?
Or 5 hours.
Or what if it was a sophomore class?
Yeah, it's the freshmen, it's just,
I'm sure if you asked the junior class to do it, all of them would be willing. And I'm sure if the juniors did it, the becoming seniors would help influence the freshmen who join their sports teams who come into the community to also do it, regardless of the requirement. So even if it was the sophomore grade or the junior grade or the freshman grade, or if it was the juniors doing it voluntarily and the freshmen doing it mandatorily, it wouldn't matter.
Actually, I mean, since it's just a pilot and it's not a graduation requirement yet, we could say it's open to all 4 grades.
I will say that we envisioned the whole school having access to this website, beginning to use it as soon as now, and that the coming into being of this program would be to the benefit of the entire school immediately, even though our vision was for the requirement to apply as a requirement just to those incoming 9th graders. In fairness, in terms of being fully, forewarned and advised of the expectation. I'm also just leery. I appreciate the efforts to compromise, but I'm also leery of just kind of coming up with it on a whim now and changing it when a really deliberate long-term process has produced what we have now. Not to say that it has to be that or nothing at all, but I'm respectful also of the process and the voices that produce this.
I think it sounds like, we'll just continue with the motion.
Well, that's right.
It sounds like you would prefer, if it's not going to move forward, to not pilot and come back with a new proposal at another time.
Well, I think Michelle's motion is very close to the spirit of what is being offered here. It's the expectation that all our incoming 9th graders will complete 10 hours of community service. We envision it as the path to a graduation requirement. I don't see a major problem with the issue of removing graduation requirement from the language, because the outcome really, in terms of all our incoming 9th graders having this experience, which is really what we're after, and sending a really strong signal about what our school and community believes in and stands for, and providing those opportunities to our students, to all of our students, in a way that's totally inclusive, is what I think really matters to this group. And I think this motion gets us there.
All right, well, we have a motion, we have a second. Let's take a vote. All those in favor, Matt? Tim? Carrie? Jen?
No.
Michelle?
Aye.
Ally?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Okay.
And just to remind, which I did not take out, the language that there are, if there truly is a reason that if you cannot do it, there is a waiver available if there is a student who is unable to complete the hours, either any of them or some of them.
100%. There's no intention for a kind of punitive approach to this. It's very much in the spirit of community and wanting to empower people. And as we would apply in any case, there'll be a reasonable expectation for what students can do, and a waiver process available in the case of extenuating circumstances. We really want this to work. We want people to love it. We want it to be embraced. I appreciate the complexity of it and the thoughtfulness that all of you brought to this important issue. And
it was a really good discussion.
Yeah, and that will be included in the program of studies language. You had it in the original one, that there's waivers are available. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then we'd come back in January of next year with all of the information requested.
Yeah, let's get there when we get there.
Well,
No, I'm just
I think
kidding.
it's helpful
Yeah, no, I
to
was thinking
sort of
in
set a
January.
benchmark to
We
say.
would need to do it in January, yes.
In January
because
with
around the
survey.
same time for the.
Next program of studies.
Yeah, the next program of studies.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. That'll be an
And I
important
would
task for our
even
school
actually-
council to continue that work.
To survey the 9th grade, even consider the next 8th grade.
Yep. Yes.
Did you
hear what Jenna said?
I missed part of
She
it.
was surveying not only the 9th graders who just completed the service, but the incoming 8th graders as well to get their sense, so.
Right.
Mr. Smith can help with that.
Yes, right.
Make a note.
That's
Send
right.
out a survey.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Right, should we vote
Can
on
I
the program
just,
study?
yeah,
We
but
did. No, we did.
Well, that was my question. Does it matter that, I mean, it doesn't matter.
We
Okay.
didn't touch
I wasn't against the rest of the program study.
Yeah, me
Oh.
either.
So I don't think that matters,
Let the
but
record show.
just.
Matt and I were not against
We
the
love-
entire program.
Just vote on the policy, not the program study.
Do you want to do it separate?
Do you want
Do you
to
wanna
take a
have
separate
it
vote so you
No,
can be
no,
on
I
record?
just wanted to make sure it wasn't going to cause a
Yes.
problem.
On the record, we wanted to.
Okay, got it. Okay.
The first bullet bothered me.
All right, so we are moving to 7.5 to approve grants and donations and act as appropriate. We don't have anything, right?
No, I don't think we did that at the last meeting.
That's right.
So we're okay.
And then no surplus this time. All right, so we are moving to item 8, subcommittee and project reports. Matt?
Yeah. There was an East School Council meeting today that I missed, so I will get an update later. Hef had a meeting a couple weeks ago where Katie came and talked about potential grant, kind of focus areas for grant opportunities. It was a good discussion. And SPED, we still need to schedule our next subcommittee meeting. And I did send an email on it tonight. So in your inbox, Tim and Allie.
Tim?
Yes, it's all negotiations, which Carrie will update. But we had a Human Rights Commission meeting, which I was unable to attend because of negotiations, and we had a SNAP meeting, which I was unable to attend because of negotiations. So those are my, and we're going to have an educational programming subcommittee in time to review the middle of the year data, but I don't have a date for that yet. Katie and I will talk.
Carrie?
Okay,
Sounds like negotiations.
Yep, that would be correct. Salary negotiations, since our last meeting, we met with units A, which is our teachers, and D, administrative assistants. And we're continuing to work towards a successor contract with the teachers and a brand new contract with the administrative assistants. We have a strategy meeting tomorrow, and we are meeting with Unit D on Thursday, and then Unit A next Tuesday. And we have multiple meetings scheduled with all of those 3 units, including our second mediation meeting with Unit B, which is the paraprofessionals, on February 6th.
Okay. Jen?
There are warrants in the packet, and finance facilities is meeting next.
This Friday?
This Friday.
This Friday,
Like,
yeah.
what week is it?
I know.
This Friday at 10:15.
You know what, I would just like to invite everybody on, or mark your calendars, on March 16th, which is a Saturday, from 1 to 3, the Hingham Unity Council and the CPAC are co-hosting a community conversation on disabilities. So I'll send everybody something, but I wanted to invite folks to attend.
Okay, great. Ally?
Do you have something?
Just a couple quick things. PRS School Council is meeting tomorrow. Hingham Arts Alliance has set the date for their Party for the Arts fundraiser, so mark your calendars for the 24th of March. And then policy, we still need to set a date for our next meeting. I was just in a little bit of a holding pattern, one, because I haven't been there, but also with negotiations and budget, I wanted to kind of get through the hump of that before we start throwing more things onto our meeting schedule to approve. So that's all on my end.
Thank you. Matt, do you have something else?
I was reminding you to get Allie, which you already
got
were
it.
doing.
Okay. And then for me,
Yep.
I attended a wellness committee meeting last week. There's been some good discussion about a program to have the kids do. It's online tools to help the social emotional well-being of students. We had one of the parent representatives take it during the break, and he suggested not doing all 6 to 8 modules at one time, but he loved it and he was raving about it. So looking forward to talking more about that. And I think that's all I have before we adjourn to executive session. We have future meetings coming up. January 29th, we're meeting with Capital Outlay. The times are all different, so that's going to be at 7 p.m. February 5th will be our public hearing on the budget and possible vote on the budget, starting at 6:30. And then February 7th at 6:30, we have a joint meeting with the Select Board and Advisory. Any items under 48 hours? No? Okay. Somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I will make a motion to adjourn to executive session, not to return to open session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, not to return to open session for the purpose of approving minutes from the executive session held on January 8th, 2024, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, and the chair so declares.
I so declare.
And to provide an update on negotiations with HEA Units A, B, and D, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, and the chair so declares.
I so declare. All those in favor, Matt?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye. Second.
Jen? Oh, sorry. 2 seconds, sorry. Jen? Aye. Ally?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. All right, thank you.
Adjourned.
Okay.